You want to wait till that point to get into everything?
Go ahead, I mean, it's a work session, so
Oh, all right,
however you wish.
He was very receptive to my, position, and he said that, there are questions of whether who's liable and everything like that, which I really believe is a term. I think he said he was going to get along with the attorney, which the next day there was a letter, and I think she addressed some of the main concerns. And during the conversation they had the month previous, they wanted to put an interlocal buoy ordinance together, which was in place for 18 years. So I think we're on a good track here getting this done. And I did bring up to him that council actually suggested putting 5 in place instead of just the 2, but that kind of got shot down. He goes, no, that never got shot down, we just tabled it for now.
Okay.
So I'm going to speak at their council meeting tomorrow.
Okay. Now, we were talking about just having met the easements, right? Because in the last council meeting for Bel Air Shore, they were talking about a cost of like $100,000, and I just didn't believe that it would cost $100,000 to do 3 easements, 60 foot wide or 100 foot wide. I think they were thinking the whole city, and I think you're talking about just the easements, right?
She was talking, if they put the 17 that were removed, it could be up to $100,000. And he said, we're not looking to do that, but we are, he didn't say sympathetic, but he seemed sympathetic to at least 6th and 12th Street, and possibly controlling that area a little bit more from 28th Street and Indian Rocks to, well, there's still one at 17th Street, which I'll bring up tomorrow night, which is unpermitted, and which is in their jurisdiction. But I think her letter really hammers all the issues out.
And then, Fred, we still have to decide on what we want to do in Bel Air Beach, correct?
Yeah, there are 2 separate issues. One is the issue of how you want to designate it, and that's, Lynn may want to comment, but we did the manually propelled vessels only language, and we got another response from the state agency that really wasn't that enthusiastic about that. So the 2 issues are what do you want to do within your jurisdiction, and then 2, what do you want to do about working with the neighboring municipality to have the buoys go the whole length, or cover the access areas that we currently have. Drawing up an interlocal agreement for that single purpose should be relatively straightforward.
I know we have citizens that want to comment on this, but I want to go through council first. This is a work session, but I have to ask, because normally we always allow citizens to speak, but it has to be voted on. So does anybody have an objection to have citizens speak on these issues? Hearing none, at some point when the council has kind of debated it, then I'm going to call, because I know Bill has come down especially for it, and he spoke to me a little bit beforehand.
The code says that only...
Leslie, you got to get about 3 inches closer to that mic. There you go.
Our code says only those who have previously indicated a desire to address the city council during a work session may speak to it. And I think, if we open it up to the public, we're going to be here till Thursday.
We always have opened it up to the public, so.
I would object to it.
Okay, we got 1 objection. What's the code say?
It said, this is 254 sub D. Only those persons who have previously indicated a desire to address the city council during a work session may speak to the issue. Except any member of the city council may ask questions of any person in the council chambers or any other member of the public. Any member of the public may be heard on any matter on the agenda of a work session when approved by a majority of the city council, and the mayor recognizes such person during the meeting. So I guess if you have a
I think that's what I
specific...
just did.
Pardon?
I think that's what I just did. The last sentence, I opened it up to everyone. We don't have anybody formally designated. Yeah, Patty?
Council members will, whenever
Not
you're...
in the middle of what I'm talking. As soon as I finish, she'll have the
Yes.
floor. Okay, fine. So what I did was I just opened it up for that last sentence there. I thought it was right. So you can indicate, now, in this situation, let me just just say, Phil Lusk has come here for that, he indicated to me he wants to speak, so he definitely wants to speak tonight. However, we've always opened it up. I have never chaired a meeting where we didn't allow the public to speak on any issue, and that's why we just opened it up. I mean, this is a very ambitious agenda, there's 9 items on it, we will not get this done by 10 o'clock probably, and we'll probably call it like we did last time. We're not gonna stay here all night, you know. I mean,
Well, we've got a majority of the city council has to approve opening it up to
okay,
people who have not initially, who have not indicated a desire to speak.
okay, so I asked for that before, I'm gonna ask for it again, let's get a form, oh, I'm sorry, read a slope before we do this, go ahead.
Yes, I'm with Leslie on it. I think we should follow the rules that are already preset and not continue to set them aside.
What rule would you like to follow? The one that allows a person who has pre-indicated that they want to speak, or the one that allows us to open it up to the floor? Because that's what we've traditionally followed. We can follow either, or we follow both of them. We're following the rules. Go ahead, Frank.
I actually asked Mr. Lusk to attend the last meeting, which he was here for hours, and then we never got into this situation, so he probably had better things to do. I asked him again to attend tonight, because I sat down with him, we went over this for a couple hours, him and I. So he's a voter, he has a lot of knowledge on this, and I think he should have an ample opportunity to speak on it.
I want everybody in the audience to speak on any issue. That's what we have followed. And if you don't have time for council, don't be on council.
I don't object to anyone speaking, however, I do object to a full-on back and forth, which seems to be the biggest problem we have in our meetings, is it turns into a debate or an ongoing back and forth discussion between the citizen comments and the council. So if we agree to not have a back and forth, I think we should just listen to what Mr. Lusk has to say, and then we take that into consideration.
And to that point, we have, the last 2 meetings during citizen comments, suspended the rules so that we can have that back and forth. So we can't have our cake and eat it too, as my mother used to tell me. Which one you want? You know, if we want to have a back and forth, then don't suspend the rules during citizen comments. There is no citizen comments, this is a work session. So I'm going to bring it up again. If you want to say it, go ahead, Leslie.
The rule says it has to be approved by a majority of the city council, so I think if we're going to approve people who have not previously indicated a desire to address the city council, we have to vote on it.
Correct. So that's what I had asked for. There was no one who said a word, but let's do it again officially. We're not supposed to take a vote, but we have to on this, Madam Clerk. Yeah?
Yes, and Mayor, when I raise my hand, I can't see you, so I'm not sure if you see me, okay?
Okay, yeah, I saw you, so.
Okay, so,
Frank's almost blocking you out, but.
I know.
I can move one thing out there.
So when I do that, I don't know if you see me or not. Okay.
All right, so let's take a vote, okay? So the vote is real simple. Forget about anybody who's said anything previously. This is to open up the discussion, our discussions. We're going to do just like we do during regular council sessions. You're going to come up, you're going to speak from the podium when we finish city council debate. You speak from the podium, and that's it. There's no back and forth unless somebody makes a motion to suspend those rules. And I'm not going to vote for that tonight either. So you come up, you speak your piece, and then you sit back down, and then the council debates. We're not passing anything tonight. This is a work session. Since the law doesn't allow us to talk with each other outside of here, this is the only way we can legally speak with each other. So it's just to throw out ideas, so we want to hear you. With that said, this is to open up the floor to anyone who wishes to speak at the appointed time during each item. Madam Clerk, do you want to call by person? This way we have it on the record.
Up to you.
Yeah, please.
Councilmember Aki?
Aye.
Councilmember Bankard?
Yes,
Councilmember Gunn?
Nay.
Councilmember Notaro?
No?
Councilmember Swope?
No.
Vice Mayor Gaddis?
Aye.
Mayor Manzo?
Aye. So it passes 4-3. Citizens will hear from you. You don't have to raise your hand while we're talking at each at each point, when the council has discussed it sufficiently, I'll say, let's take a break and have the citizens speak. That should be your one and only time to come up and speak, and then we'll go back to council, okay? All right, thank you. All right, so we're back to the buoy ordinance. We have to decide where we want to go as Bel Air Beach, correct? That's where we're at. Mr. Riley?
You know, can I ask Mr. Riley,
Absolutely, it's a work session.
if we did nothing with our buoy ordinance for Bel Air Beach, where would that put us? Since the buoy ordinance was already approved for a year, it's got 3 years, I think, of maintenance on it before it has to be readdressed. If we just left it lay in limbo and did nothing with it, left the buoys marked as they are, is there a penalty, a fine that we can face?
My understanding is that many of the buoys have been washed away and you have an incomplete system.
Not in Bel Air Beach. In Bel Air Shores, yes.
Well, I'm not talking about
Yeah,
Bel Air Shore.
Yeah, I'm talking about Bel Air Beach. If we just leave our buoys the way they're marked, do nothing about it right now, where does that put us?
It's status quo and that there's no change.
That is not correct. Florida Wildlife Commission says either change them or take them out. That's quote unquote what the gentleman told me.
And how soon do we have to take them out?
He didn't give me a time, but he said, we'll work with you to get your ordinance straightened out. But because this was brought to our attention, he says you have to come in compliance. And some of the compliance things which you have in your packet, get to the page, which unfortunately we don't have those things. And I did talk to some other cities, and basically what they told me is, we haven't talked to the FWC for many years. As an example, Indian Rocks told me they submitted their permit, they haven't talked to them since the permit was established. But the voting restrictions say that you, to have, other than what we have now, it says you gotta be within 500 feet of a boat ramp, or a fuel pump, or 300 feet of a lock, 300 feet of bridge fender, 300 feet of a bridge span, on a lake, on a creek. Unfortunately, we don't have any of that. So their position now that it's been brought to their attention is you need to remark your buoys. You can leave them where they're at, but you need to decide what you want to call it and create an ordinance for that.
See, my question here, and we have three legal minds here. In 2019, and the person usually signs off on the buoys, and I found all this out within the last six months I've been on council. The person signs off on the buoys of Cape Horn. I have emails from 2019 through 2020. According to the file permit, this includes 33 idle speed, no wake buoys. She's acknowledging it, okay? Up to 2020, she writes, is this extending or shrinking the oversize of the idle speed zone? She doesn't say anything about your buoys are mismarked. She approved a permit knowingly 3 times in the 6-month period that the buoys weren't in compliance according to her statute. So now there's this, and I think it's an idle threat to change this. And according to our city manager, no other towns are being addressed by this. I then wrote to the FWC and asked what towns on our island are being addressed. They replied, as of July, none. So why are we being succumbed to this? Because I brought a safety issue, and again, when I brought this safety issue, this document speaks for itself, and I'll submit it for evidence, and it's a city email, okay? If we would have just said, and this is for the record, hey, we removed too many buoys, we need to put 5 back, 5 would have been put back, it would have been approved, and it would have been done. I think we're just being persecuted because FWC didn't do their job.
And I want to say again, we did not remove any buoys. The city of Bel Beach removed no buoys.
I
We
understand
installed
that.
buoys.
But the permit request is to remove unnecessary buoys. FWC didn't know if there was 1 buoy to be removed or if there was to be removed 17. All they got was a document in front of them. They approved it with the language, idle speed, no way. And that's my whole point here, okay? Citizens came to me. I was a citizen that complained before being on council that boats were coming in, okay, at high speeds, okay? I got involved in this. If we would have just done what this document said and said, hey, look, we removed too many buoys or we need to put 5 back, I think this whole matter would have been done. And I want that clear on the record because I got accused of saying, well, you went a little bit too far and you opened the door with FWC. I never approached FWC until FWC got involved and said, oh, you can't do this.
You know, Frank, we like to hold up our strategic plan and wave it like it's been handed down from Moses on the Mount. Guess what? We don't follow it. Okay? You were out trying to help people for the safety. And what I'm hearing tonight was if it wasn't for that complaint, everything would be wonderful. Well, I'm glad you made the inquiry of FWC. And if FWC is telling us to remove our buoys and endanger the lives of our swimmers, man, I still have the card from the reporter on News 8. We'll get him down to this beach. We'll get you out on that beach, and you tell the whole world what's going on. Because that's, I'm not going to say the word bull, and you know how it ends. That's nonsense. I can't believe that's what the state of Florida stands for, that you're going to endanger people. I can't believe that's what our city stands for. I applaud what you've done. I'll stand behind you 100%. Okay, if this is what FWC wants, is to remove these things, no. I mean, we'll revise the ordinance, we'll do what we have to do, and we'll come up with a vote as to what we're going to do, whether it be nothing, paddle boards, or no wake zone, or whatever we're going to be allowed to do. But I'm with you, Frank. I mean, we're not going to be held hostage by a bunch of bureaucrats, the same bureaucrats that when you hand them an investigation, they flub it. I'm just unimpressed. I'm sorry.
Well, it doesn't.
Hold on. I haven't had a chance to speak.
Yeah.
I'm not seeing or hearing the same thing that I just heard, which is remove your buoys. I think we're out of spec. We've been put on their radar, and they're saying fix the problem or remove them. We're given a choice, one way or the other. They're not telling us to get rid of our buoys. They're saying fix the problem. I don't know how we got on the radar. It's too bad. But if we're not in spec with the state of Florida, we have a problem. We need to just correct it and move on. So that's my stance on it. There's no sense in debating over who did what or why. Let's just fix the problem and move on. This is taking a lot of time for a problem that we really can't control beyond the parameters that we're given.
Fred, what's our alternatives at this point? I know when we were last, when the ordinance, the revised ordinance came out, it was nothing in this swim zone, swim only. Which, by the way, the best beach in the country, Clearwater, just there the other week, has big telephone poles driven in the water, swim zone, that's it. Didn't have to worry about getting hit in the head with anything, okay? So, what are our options at this point? Because I know we've been back and forth. I'm actually confused. I know no is always the option. No, nothing, they're totally happy with that. We were talking about paddle boards, we were talking about a no-wake zone. They came back to you, they said they weren't thrilled with stuff, so can you just like in a thumbnail give us what's our options at this point so we can pick?
So everybody in the room understands, and I'll ask Lynn to comment if he would like to. We've twice submitted draft ordinances for their review. Based on the most recent feedback we've received, or Lynn's received, the three options that really are available are no motorized vessels, no motorboats, or motorboats prohibited. Those are the three options. Having said, that's your understanding?
Yes.
too?
Yeah.
Having said that, the thing that, you know, I'm very much, will say this comment in line with what Vice Mayor Gaddis just said. To me, it's a problem that's readily available to fix. The premise that I have always taken in discussing this with Lynn and then discussing it with the city council is there's a Florida statute that says if you're going to do this, you have to follow a certain procedure, and that's the procedure that we have followed. The procedure requires that you submit the resolution, or excuse me, the ordinance to FWC after it's been approved. The point that I discussed with Lynn several times was, since there's already an ongoing discussion, and this will, in my opinion, be scrutinized, send it to them ahead of time so that the city council doesn't pass something that they in turn then have trouble with for some unbeknownst reason. So twice we've done that, and we've gotten 2 responses, and that now leave us with those, in my understanding, those 3 options. So that's where you are. I would, if you're going to choose one of those 3, I would revise the ordinance again, have Lynn send it to them again, and get finality on their approval so that you know with clarity that if you do indeed enact the ordinance, then they will not have any further issue with it. So that's where you stand in my opinion.
So the 3 choices are, number 1, no vessels or swim area. That means all vessels, I'm reading this right from the, you're done.
No,
No?
it's the next one below it. No motorized vessels or no motorboats or motorboats prohibited.
Okay. So all vessels equipped with any mechanical means of propulsion are prohibited from entering the marked area, even if the mechanical means of propulsion is not in use. That's our option.
According to what feedback we've gotten from FWC, that's correct.
Mayor, just to clarify, we got approval of the no vessel zone, okay? And then there was some discussion by council about, well, what about,
Paddleboards and that
paddleboards,
sort of thing.
sailboards, whatever you want to call them. And that's when we went back to them, and this is the options in the email that they sent back to us, a copy of the resolution. They said those 3 things: no motorized vessels, which doesn't prohibit a paddleboard, a canoe, or anything like that. No motorboats or motorboats prohibited. So that's what they came back with us.
But we still have the option of no vessels if that's what we want to go to. That means nothing. Okay. But the 3rd option, this manually propelled vessels only, that's not an option.
The what? Yeah.
Number 3, manually propelled vessels only. That's paddleboards, canoes, that kind of stuff, inflatables.
I'm looking at the
You
rules.
said it's not an option?
That's what, I was reading all 3 of these, and they said number 2 and then number 1. So I'm wondering myself, why is number 3 not an option? I thought those are our 3 choices. Because this is going to be easy. We can go around the table and each person can say where we're at and see if we can get this thing out of committee. I mean, ultimately, we're going to have to kind of pick 1 of the 3, I think. But if I only have 2 to pick from, then it's 1 of the 2. 1 second, though. Let me just get through this. I know you're there. I'm looking right at you.
You know, what they gave us in the response was no motorized vessels or no motorboats or motorboats prohibited. all vessels equipped with mechanical means of propulsion are prohibited. So what they're basically saying is, that's just a word to say it's got a motor of some type, whether it's an electric motor or whatever, it would be prohibited.
So that's it. We've got two choices. Nothing or no motorized vessels, no motorboats or motorboats prohibited, which means you can put your canoe, your kayak, but you can't do anything more. No motors, even if they're not running.
To me, they sound the same, just different way of saying them, either no motors or manually, anyway, so just this is the way they want the wording, but it means the same thing, so I think it's basically what we wanted, just not worded the way we wanted, but it's still what we wanted, so I think we should be happy with that and go forward with that and move this agenda on.
I have a question about that, which is how did we get pigeonholed into F2? How did that happen? Because originally we were looking at D, E, F, F1, F2, F3. And now I'm hearing we only have F2. No motorized vessels, no boats, nothing with power, no ifs, ands, or buts. You can't raise your trim, turn your engine off. You can't do anything. And I'm just a little confused how we got. Is it because we gave some parameters that we were looking for to FWC, and that's what they came back with?
We gave them an updated ordinance, and because of the discussion with canoes and all kayaks and whatever, Fred updated the ordinance, we sent it back to them, and you've got a copy of what they sent back to us with their highlights.
Okay, so their answers they're giving us are based on what we're looking for. Every time you send a letter, they come back with, okay, yep, you're in the right direction, but because of the way that you worded this, now you can only select F2, basically. Is that what I'm hearing?
That's my understanding.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
I mean, I still see it as all the same. No power-driven vessels to me is the same as no motorized vessels, which is the same as no internal combustion motors. So to me, it just all seems like just synonyms, all meaning the same thing. So I don't understand why we're going between E and F2 and 1 and 3. It seems like it's all the same to me. So I say we pick either no motorized vessels, no motorboats, or motorboats prohibited. One of the three they gave us, probably no motorized vessels is the easiest in my opinion, and just let's go for it. I think we're making this a lot more complicated than it needs to be.
I would agree. I think we're all agreeing on manually propelled vessels are okay, but turn your engine off. You know, you can't come in with your engine on.
Well, you can't get out without an engine either. That's the problem.
Well, you can with a
You
nice
can
oar,
idle
and
in.
some muscle, and
You can
good
coast
whip.
One person at a time. Go ahead.
You can coast in, but you're not getting out without.
Then don't go in.
without a motor.
Then don't go in. You got that. You don't need
I
to.
think is this what you wanted to speak about?
Yeah, I think I have just some guidance that might bring you in a little different direction. You are pigeonholed a little bit.
Want to hear from Bill? I know he's prepared for this tonight, so. Bill, why don't you come on up?
Any citizen.
Does this mic work, Joe?
Yeah, it should. Yeah.
The button.
The button on.
There you go.
Bill Lusk, Hibiscus Drive West. First of all, great dialogue, because the questions are really important, and it's part of why I wanted to come down here. I don't want to waste any time if the entire council wants to exclude motors from north to south Bel Air Beach. It's a moot exercise for me if you've already concluded we don't want both. But I will say, for 70 years, we've had boats come into our beach. We've never had an accident from north to south. You're gonna get an individual stepping out of order occasionally, and that applies to everything, automobiles, bikes, boats. So I am a little confused and playing some catch-up. I've been helped a little bit with some of the communication that's happened over the few months. I'm really curious if you all are aware that what we change if we're doing between two cities means that you are also making decisions for Bel Air Shores to not have boats come in as well. Now, I come from 40 years of boating on the West Coast. My parents had 450 feet on the Gulf of Mexico. My dad would have been really upset if someone decided you and your family cannot idle no wake into your home. That's the Bel Air Shores side, which I found interesting on this letter, that they're not prepared yet to make decisions. They're waiting for proposals. Is it just the parking lots that you're creating swim areas? This is where swim areas start to make sense when you drive the coast as a boater. And an example there, you just brought up Clearwater. I know the whole area of Clearwater. What you are referencing is the public beach. In comparison to Bel Air Beach, that's Morgan Street Park. Yeah, we should probably have some buoys out there that say no swim, separate them by 75 yards. But getting back to the issue at hand, and I think this is where Dave was going, is it the way we're asking for an ordinance update? Because we do have options. If you look at this graph that everybody has, if this is such a dangerous issue, which I can't find any, I don't recall any incidents. I am a boater that idles up and anchors, walk the dog, get a bag of ice, say hello to some friends. It's never been an issue. But there are areas under this 327.46 F5 that go down and say, you can. Municipalities and counties have the authority to establish by ordinance the following other boating restriction areas. An ordinance establishing a slow speed, minimum wake, or numerical speed limit. And there's some criteria under there. Do we not meet subject to unsafe levels of vessel traffic congestion? Isn't that what you're arguing, is we have unsafe traffic, therefore we fall under, which to me, I'll be honest with you, is the complete opposite of what the logic should be. You should have no motor exclusion if it's unsafe. But they're saying here, under this one, 327.46 1C 2B, if it's unsafe, how do you establish that to get slow speed? Now, I'm not sure if everyone is aware, though, that our ordinance to date, until we change it, and I understand the proactive side of getting ahead of the process, we've submitted an ordinance that's changing what we've always had. That is the same for Bel Air Shores, and I'm not sure if they're aware that there's a potential that you're taking their ability to bring boats in. Now, if that's the case, I am in 100% agreement that slow the roll. I'm confident that FWC is our friend and should always be our friend, no matter what has slipped through, what have you. Talked to a lot of different municipalities. People have different relationships. It's like the general contractor going to get his permit. This guy plays nice, this guy doesn't. Sometimes things move quicker. Municipalities have worded things differently to get certain things done on the Gulf of Mexico. Others, things just haven't been checked. You also have this no buoy thing that has been brought up. Right in Clearwater, when you go past the public beach, there's no buoys, and you're still in Clearwater. Those are beautiful homes. That's Hulk Hogan's home down there, and others. No buoys. Sand Key, just north of us, no buoys, no accidents. So we have options. You can have ordinances without buoys. You can't have buoys without ordinances. We just seem to be down a path, maybe because we're being told or we've asked for it, that hey, going forward, even though 70 years have been a certain way, we don't want any boats in there. Even though there has not been a problem with it, yet the problems observed, I guess, are Bel Air Shores and pictures there. So much more to talk on the subject. I'm late. You guys have been talking about it for a long time. There's options. Do you do a study? What does the FWC really want? Do you let the water settle a little bit? And they're not going to come at us next month and say, you're fine for not doing this, because we sent a letter last month. I'll offer help where I can, but I just really am not sure where all of you are. Are we taking a city, and even previous to that, that has allowed one of the residents to pull up in their boat safely, that's idle in a lake, and we're taking it away as a result of honorably solving some parking lot access for the other residents and creating swim zones outside of those. I'm a little confused on the ultimate goal, but there's options. And an enclosure, worst case scenario option, I'll just give you a perspective from a boater perspective. If you're out in the water, one, based on your experience, you know standards without buoys. That's put aside, not everyone has that experience. Buoys help, regardless what is stated on them. We know that. And then you have what is stated on it. We all know that, hey, that's motor exclusion, they're protecting the grass over there, that's a public swimming area. So as a boater, you know the differences, but visually creating a line of buoys on the Gulf of Mexico in a safe area like ours, you can accomplish a lot by doing things creatively. Here's an example. If you have Bel Air Shores and their lots, 2 or 1, I'm not sure what's still open on the table there, create swim zones. You now in the Bel Air Shores area, through their approval, have created swim zones. A marker left and right, 75 yards apart out in the water. That area, that whole parking lot going out is motor exclusion. It's like Clearwater Beach. Morgan Street, same thing, spread it out, 75 yards. All you're using is coordinates on the Gulf of Mexico, very similar to how these buoys were set. You could also take our 4 easements that go north of Bel Air Shores all the way to the Sand Key line and create an area of swim zone as well. So what you did was you didn't strip the city of having boat access, and we're a boating community, but made these areas of access swim areas. Visually, when you go down the Gulf of Mexico, you created a straight line. And no other boater is going to know that. So there's a lot of discussion that you could have. My first question was, where are you at? I'm late to the game. If you guys have already decided, hey, we're taking that away, then there's no more discussion we have. So hope that helps.
Thank you very much, Bill. I'm going to open it up to other citizens, and I'll come back to council. And Bill will address you, but we'll address your comments after we finish. Anyone else want to speak on this issue? Seeing no other hands, I'll bring it back to council. Bill, let me just say a couple things. Number one, Bel Air Shores is their own sovereignty. So what we do in here does not control what they do there. Frank's going to go speak there tomorrow night. They've been very receptive, and I'll tell you what, that wasn't the case just a couple of months ago, not to us, but they were debating this amongst themselves, and they weren't too crazy about putting buoys out there. So this is really good, and I hope that they'll go along with something for protection of the individual. So that's great, and I encourage it. I don't believe as a council we made up our mind. This discussion came because our original thing said no, and I said, no, what about paddle boards, kayaks, that kind of stuff? Not really going to get significantly hurt. I mean, you might get a bump on the head, but can we do it? And then we got into this whole discussion. Dave Gaddis brought up, well, what about idling in? And I'm like, well, can we do that? Can we set up a zone for that? Then I believe we were told, no, we can't do it. So I don't think any real decision has been made. It's all on the table. But now we've had Lynn and Fred Riley go back to FWC, and I'm as confused as anyone else because it seems like our choices are getting taken away when everything was on the tables here. And now we're being strong-armed like fix it or else, and I don't like that at all. If they said that, I really don't like that. Then they're not our friends. So we'll fix it, but it's not or else. You gonna rip the buoys out? Good, let me know the day that happens. I'll be here with a TV crew. I don't think they'll do that, okay? I'll call their bluff. Yeah.
See, what I think we failed to do is agree upon what we would like to do. If we could have our way, what do we want as a council? We need to reach a consensus on what it is that's best for Bel Air Beach. And once we've completely decided on that, rather than just saying, allowing somebody to tell us what our options are, then we go back to FWC and just, rather than writing the ordinance, just say, this is what we're looking for. This is what the city would like to have. I am blown away that we have a Long Beach and we're about to completely exclude boaters 100%. I understand we don't want boaters jetting up and down our beach, but it's a little bit shocking, and I think we just need to tell them what it is that we're looking for, and let Fred get involved, and go back and have another conversation with them. Maybe we'll wear them down. I don't know, but.
Wear down for the government. What we were talking about, I'll tell you what I'd be satisfied with, and I'm not a boater, I don't have a dog in the fight, but I do respect the rights of all the boaters, okay? And we've done, they're experienced, he's telling us we've done it for many, many years, but I've also almost been run over out there swimming. That's nonsense, because they're gonna hit and then they're gonna run. You know, and my skull's gonna be carved open with some problem. I don't need that, and neither do we as a city. You're on notice that there's a problem. I don't know how many times Frank Banco's just given us proof, you know, of him seeing stuff, of course, across the street and also stuff here. So if I was the governor and what could I do, I would love to have what we had talked about. One, or remember, we're only talking from 19th Street North. That's all we're speaking about. Have a zone, however big is sufficient. I don't know how many blocks you need to bring a 25-foot motorboat in. A block or two where you can come in and do just what we're talking about. You mark it off, you swim at your own risk over there, you know that people may be idling in, the responsible people will idle in, the yahoos will come in too fast and cause problems, but the bottom line is that's the zone where boats are going to come, and it's marked off. And I think when we brought that up, we were told you can't do that. So that would be, in my perfect world, this protects your boaters' rights, it protects your swimmers' rights. You want to swim in that zone? Okay.
Mayor, just to clarify something, and I'm going to use Clearwater Beach as an example. Once you get past into North Beach, there is no more swim zone, okay? And anybody can go in there. And if we want to just create a swim zone, and it's, I don't know, 100 yards this way from Morgan Park and 100 yards that way, that's the swim zone. We get rid of the rest of the buoys, and that's the swim zone. Then there's no regulation, I guess, to some degree. But if you want to go swim, then you need to swim in that area. But the way it's set up now, because we have all those buoys, we either have the option of making it no motorboats or whatever other things they talk about, or make it a vessel exclusion zone. I don't think the council wants to do that, but you know, maybe the solution is to do kind of what Clearwater Beach has done, and just make it, you know, whatever it is. You know, we can map it and figure out how far, and then we go back to FWC and say, okay, this is our swim zone for Bel Air Beach. It may be 10 buoys, I don't know, you know, but.
What's the space, approximate footage from 19th to our northern border? How many, I mean, you're saying 100 yards, but that seems small in comparison to what I know we have.
Like 9/10 of a mile, something like that.
Okay.
I might be off.
All right. So if we get a half a mile and a half a mile, everybody would be happy with that? That's half
Put it
a
in the
mile,
middle.
that's a lot of swimming.
If you put it in the middle,
Yeah.
then,
I'm not coming back to citizen, we just do it once, yeah.
you know, so, I mean, that's an option. And that's probably what you would maybe suggest to Bel Air Shore, because whatever happens, they're gonna have to create an ordinance to meet what we're looking for.
Well, that's a good question now. Mr. Riley might be able to answer this. We created an interlocal agreement like we once had. Does that interlocal agreement cover the buoys in those coordinates that we're going to request, regardless of what their ordinance says? Since the interlocal agreement will be maintained and addressed by Bel Air Beach with coordinates from, I can give it to you right now, but it doesn't matter, at 6th Street, 12th Street, or whatever, down, does that interlocal agreement abide by the laws of jurisdictions? without Bel Air Shores revamping their they have almost the same ordinance that we have right now when it comes to a safety zone.
I'm gonna hopefully answer your question. I'll give it what I would call a conceptual answer, okay? Where their jurisdiction ends, the city of Bel Air Beach's jurisdiction begins. So you have two different jurisdictions. Each city has to, only has jurisdiction over what is within their own jurisdiction. So that's what you can pass an ordinance for. The ordinance that we prepared designated the swim area, and it designated it from one end of the city's jurisdiction to the northern end, okay? As Bill had explained, you conceivably or conceptually could create several different swim areas in there. You just have to define them, okay? And the nuance of all this is that the interlocal agreement is to address what you're going to do in the area that is for the benefit of the citizens of Bel Air Beach, yet it's not within your jurisdiction. That's what the interlocal agreement would address. And then the other thing, to me, it's just, again, conceptually prudent, is you're thinking through how do we make continuity along this stretch of beach between the two cities, and continuity is how do you have continuity of purpose, and that we're trying to, you don't want it complicated. Part of the practical thing with all of this is it needs to be uncomplicated so that, people can look at the buoy and understand immediately what it means. And that's really what you're looking for, whether you're a swimmer or you're a boater. So, the other thing I would say, based on the letter from Regina, is they're trying to address how this, if you were going to do an interlocal agreement, how it would come together, and they're proposing, basically an allocation of costs. So that's also a part of what her letter says, is, in my opinion.
Can I say something? I understand, like going back to what Mr. Lusk said, I know that for years we've done it this way and there's never been a problem, so I don't really like I call that burying your head in the sand where there's no problem, you ignore it before it becomes a problem. So I like the proactive approach. Even though there has never been an accident, doesn't mean there can't be one tomorrow. So I think something should be done. Going kind of what you were just saying, I was going to bring up, I do not like this letter from this lawyer from Bel Air Shore saying payment of attorney's fees. I think that is ballsy. I would never expect to say to any other city that we would do an agreement and say, oh, hey, by the way, pay Fred's fees. So I'm against that part. That's ridiculous. I like the idea of a swim area, because I'm with you, Dave. I mean, we've boated up to the beach responsibly and enjoyed it and picked up family and done all that. So I want to find a compromise where you can go, but then it's also safe for swimmers. So I'm kind of leaning towards the idea of a swim zone, kind of like what Lynn said, where, I don't know. But that doesn't solve the problem with the parking accesses for our residents that access the 6th, 12th, and 18th parking lots. So we gotta figure that out too. But that may be two separate issues, and maybe instead of trying to solve both at one time, maybe we need to focus on our city and deal with our buoys and swim zones. And then once that's established, then we can try to get together with Bel Air Shore, not pay their attorney fees. I will never agree to that. That is ridiculous and rude on their part. So that's where I stand.
I mean, we can't do anything on 6, 12, and 18. That's theirs. I mean, we can ask them, we can tell them what we're doing, we can suggest, but ultimately they make the final and only decision on that. We have no say in it, period. We have no rights, the way I read the deeds, to start telling them what they're doing in the water. I don't believe we have that right. So I think that we can only talk about 19th Street and above. How we split it, I don't know. We're giving more protection than people have right now, so nobody should complain that I didn't get the swim zone, you know, I got the swim boat zone. You have a swim boat zone right now. So, you know, if we make it swim only, it's only gonna get better. Now, who gets the swim zone? Well, I don't know. You know, I don't know. I don't know where we make the line of demarcation or lines of demarcation. Maybe we make it every other block. And then to Bill Lusk's point, voters that are not familiar with the area, they see a line of buoys and they stay out. The ones that really are from here know, and then they come in and, you know, they know every other block you can come in and it's a non-swim, or every 2 blocks it's a non-swim zone, something like that. But then you do have that visual that all the buoys are in line, and people will, just by seeing it, they're not gonna, most of them aren't gonna ride up and see what they say, they're gonna stay away. Leslie?
I don't think it's possible to have a swim zone broken up along the Bel Air beach. I can swim in front of that condo, I can't swim in front of that condo. I mean, that's just doesn't make any sense. And to me, when it talks about manually propelled vessels, it says, if they have a mechanical means of propulsion, they can enter the area only if the mechanical means of propulsion is not in use. So they can come up, and we have people that come up to the condo next to us, come in with their boat, anchor it there, pick up the kids and so on, but they've got to get in manually as opposed to on the engine, and I think that's the only sensible way to do it. We can do it for our entire beach and worry later about Bel Air Shore.
I agree with you on Bel Air Shore. It's never a no swim zone. You're always allowed to swim in the boating area. You just have to be cognizant that possibility of a boat coming in. There's never a no swim zone. It's a no boat zone, or a swim only zone, I'll say. So you're always able to swim if you want to swim, but you know, you just better keep an eye on things.
I don't think it's feasible to break up our beach into X feet versus X feet.
I mean, she makes an excellent point. Who's the villain that's going to go tell what condo that you no longer have? And she lives in a condo, so maybe we should start with yours. No, I'm just kidding.
But right now you have boats are allowed, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's not, you know.
Well, no, I agree with what Mr. Lusky said.
Yeah.
And we argued, we had coffee, and we alienated a couple tenants there. But it was a good conversation, but the bottom line is, if there is a visual like line, it'll keep the weekend warriors, in my opinion, out.
Folks, we've been doing it for an hour, and where we want to go with this, because we either have to give Mr. Riley and Mr. Reeves some more direction, or we need to kind of come to a consensus so that we can bring this either back to FWC for ordinance approval so we can vote on it, or we can keep studying it. Leslie, let's go around the table. Let's start, Leslie, Dave, let's go around.
It's page 4 of 12 on this ordinance, and manually propelled vessels only. If you have a mechanical means, you have to turn it off. You know, if you want to come in and you've got a paddle in, that would be my suggestion, that we do our ordinance that way.
But didn't the FWC said they're not allowed that option?
According to Lynn, that wasn't somebody said that wasn't an option, only 102.
That was what we said back to them.
Okay, they said no.
You
Okay.
said no?
Yeah, they got into the issue with, they gotta lift their motor out, you know, and it's very hard to control, that's what they said.
It says, if possible to do so, mechanical means of propulsion is tilted. Doesn't say, if you can't do it, you can't come in.
You know, I could go back to them and ask them if we put a swim zone, and I'm just gonna use the scenario that we took Morgan and went so far that way and so far that way and centered it. This is the swim zone. Is that okay with you? Or is it okay to put multiple swim zones there? That's a couple options. And we'll sketch a couple maps out, and I'll send it to them and say, does this work? And at the same time, you might as well, since we're gonna hopefully work something out with Bel Air Shore, you might as well throw that on the map too and say, in Frank's case at Sixth Street, would you put 2 buoys there and make it a swim zone? Probably. But it's probably the 2 buoys are the width of the, what do you want to call it, the line, okay? And then 12th Street, the same thing. Would you allow us to do breakups like that? But I think that's a couple good questions we need to ask them.
David, that's exactly what I was going to suggest. I like what Bill brought up. I think it's a great idea, and I think that will give the perception that boats are not allowed for people that don't live here, but for people that do live here, they're not going to abuse our beach. They're not going to, look, whenever I go up and down the beach, I stay as far away from those buoys as I can. I don't come near the beach. And most people do that already. You're always going to have that one guy in his little boat that's going to cross that boundary, and no matter what we do, he's going to continue doing it. It's not going to change. But let's move forward on this and see if they'll buy into that idea, because I like it.
That's what I said before, I'm gonna stick with it. Multiple swim zones, ideally every other block, okay? This way no one, if you live in a condo, you could walk 1 block or you can walk 1 block the other way. No one's being put out of their way, no one's getting benefited over the next person, every other block. And then to Bill Lusk's point, I really like that idea about the visual, Bill, that you look down, you're gonna see old buoys, as Dave just said. The locals know that you can come in every other block. And by the way, locals, okay? If you abuse it and somebody's head gets carved up, I'm sure the council, wherever the council is at that point, is going to be having another meeting on this ordinance. It could be banned, right? So, I mean, hopefully it's an outsider that's not paying attention, but I'm taking Bill at his word. I've never heard of any problems. But, if everybody's responsible, it could work. So, as many as possible, every 2 blocks, every 1 block, whatever, if possible, have swim zone, boat zone. And boat zone is...
We'll give them a couple options.
Right. And boat is boat swim, so anyone who wants to do a long distance swim, no one's stopping you. Problem.
That's the consensus.
Okay, well, we're going right around the table, I want to hear from everyone.
No, I agree with multiple swim zones, that way it's kind of the best of both worlds.
Frank?
Since we have a few voters here, I hate to ask Mr. Lusk this.
I don't want to go back to the floor, we're trying to do what we said, we're just going
As
to go on.
a voter, how far do you have to stay away from a buoy? If your buoys are in the water and you're going north or south, in the parallel line of the buoys, do you have to stay 100 yards from a buoy? Do you have to-
I can pull right next to it.
Just don't cross it, it's like a line.
You can go right next to it. And most voters who are conscientious don't.
And that's the law, because I can't find that ridge space.
Once you come in the zone, it's like the end zone, you've
No, I
broken the
understand.
plane, you're
I'm
guilty.
just saying, someone was saying you need it like 100 yards out or whatever. Okay.
So you like the idea of multiples? Okay. On the telephone, Patty,
One moment.
we still have them?
Yes, they're there. Councilmember Swope.
I'm okay with multiple swim zones, but I think we need to figure out where they're going to be first, because I don't think it's really right to limit the condo owners, because that's a whole nother world. But I think we should just put a plan together and then sit down and look at it and figure out where we're going to go, instead of all this back and forth and trying to figure out multiple cities standing on it and everything. Let's just have city manager put together a map, like he said, and we'll take a look at it and then move forward.
What's going on the line? Okay, so I think we have consensus, it's multiple swim zones, see what we could do with that one. And
See what they tell us.
see what they tell us. You know what? Tell them. That's what our council wants.
Yeah.
So tell them to make it happen. It's got to be possible. Right?
Not to complicate things, but I'll just say this, because it has not yet been brought up this evening. It was brought up last time you discussed it. There was a very concerted effort to accommodate people that go on paddle boards and things like that. And that is another big thing. If you do the separate basically the separate two zones, then, you know, somebody on a paddleboard can go right down the line and there's no issue. So, I mean, what the council's really trying to do is find a workable solution that will take into account the various uses of the beach, and that's why you're having, you know, a lengthy debate over that.
Just,
Go ahead, Frank.
and if we get a no from them, I think we should ramp this up to Mr. Moreno, the chairman of FWC. I think their next meeting might be December or January. I tried to get on the October meeting. I applied in a timely manner. I got nothing but crickets back, okay, for the public comment session. Next time they rotate their meetings, if this isn't resolved, I will attend one of their meetings and express my anger there. But what I'm saying is, I don't think we're getting to the right person. Their strategic plan is pretty crystal clear, okay? And I think he needs to be addressed in some of these commissions.
Fred, when I spoke, when I was thinking about people on paddle boards and things like that, I'm envisioning them going straight out and then beyond the buoys and working their thing out there. We let you get into the water. Some cities don't even let you do that, but we let you get into the water. But it wasn't to like be paddleboarding up and down and coming into people's head and stuff. That's not what I envisioned. I would not vote for that.
No, I understand that, but the thing that you have to factor in is they basically are, the buoys have to be clear about what is allowed and what's not allowed. And you only have so many words in which to do it. And they've defined in the administrative code provision what are the options. So, I mean, to me, going back to them again and doing what y'all have instructed Lynn to do, it shows absolute good faith on the city council's part to try and find a workable solution and work with them. So I would hope they would be receptive to that.
You know, I know this is probably a massive long shot, given a government entity, but, you know, just like we have people coming on the telephone, even if they can't come in person, it would really be helpful if a representative who could talk with us would be here. I mean, either on telephone or in person, because we could hash all of this stuff out with them, and, you know, we keep sending you guys back, and then you get answers, and you bring them back, and you're doing wonderfully, but we could probably get a lot more done if they would send somebody, because like you said, we are trying to just keep our citizens safe here, so we're not trying to make trouble.
Well, I'm not trying to make trouble with this
No.
comment either,
Yeah.
but I will say it nonetheless. What I fully expect you will get by having Lynn propose this to them, hopefully they will say, yeah, we're receptive, but they are more likely to say, send us another ordinance and we'll look at it. And then what you would have to do as a council is decide how you want to define the swim zones. And, you know, just like you've already done it for the draft ordinance we prepared, you would have to have a definition and ideally a map, so it's easier for them to conceptually understand what you're even talking about.
All right, folks, are we done with number one? This one should be a quick one. Discussion on sign ordinance digital. Who brought this, so I can defer to the city manager when I don't see anything, Mr. City Manager.
Well, at the last council meeting, the work session, it was brought up that we needed to adjust our sign ordinance to add digital signs into it. So Fred prepared something and it's at your desk. And it's kind of it's little or nothing or some great plan. So I think what we need to know for Fred and my sake is how far you want to go and how important is it in the bigger scheme of things. Is it a problem? That's, I guess, how I would look at it.
Not a problem yet. But I just saw the sign has been turned on, so it conceivably could become a problem. We don't have to deal with this. I think Glenn Gunn brought this up and said we should address it. Is Glenn on the line, Patty?
Yes, he is.
Okay, Glenn brought this up and he had concerns, so why don't we get out to him first, because he had some specific concerns on digital.
Councilmember Gunn?
Yeah, I'm on the
Can't
line
hear him.
here. I had previously submitted some
Hang on, we can't hear him.
considerations. Some considerations for best practices that other municipalities have incorporated into their ordinances. I think for the most part, Fred's outline kind of touches on some of those things, although I'm not quite sure it touches on everything. And there are some issues. Let me see if I can pull it up here very quickly. Well, let me just speak from memory. I think one of the things was the dwell time. That is typically based on some sort of formula. The number that was quoted in the Tampa thing was 15 seconds. And typically that number comes from a formula based on the line of sight of 500 feet and how fast the traffic's moving. And for 35 miles an hour and 500 feet, the standard is 11 seconds. So I'm not quite sure where that comes from. And the other thing that I've thought about is at the very end, we need to think about whether how this is going to interact with zoning and whether this is a by right kind of ordinance or a special use permit required. And we may want to pitch this to the advisory committee or even the planning zone to give some consideration to this and maybe some feedback on that sort of thing. Those are probably the big things that I see in this thing. I think it's an important thing that needs to be added, and might as well do it now rather than, everything is always trying to get ahead of the thing. The only thing I see is unexpected consequences out of all of this stuff, so maybe we just need to pitch it at the advisory committee and let them think about this thing and come back to us on it. That's the only input I have.
Thank you, Glenn. Fred?
May I make a couple comments? One, I told Lynn earlier today, I made a mistake in not getting this to you earlier, which was my intention. I didn't really realize it would be on the workshop agenda for tonight. So in an ideal world, I would have got you the memo when the packet went out. So I'll take a demerit on that one. Having said that, what I tried to do in the memo was pick two cities that everybody here is familiar with. Bel Air, which is in many ways is similar to Bel Air Beach. It's a residential community with very little commercial or real estate. They are primarily focused on the residents who live in a residential zoned areas. They have minimal standards related to illuminated signs. The other example is Tampa, which has massive standards because they're a fully developed large metropolitan city, and they have areas that have neon signs and flashing signs, and Dale Mabry has everything that's in there. And I would submit to you a lot of the regulation that Tampa's put in place is primarily due to what has occurred on Dale Mabry, although there's other strips that I'm sure it's applicable to. But the purpose in giving you those two is you have two different ends of the spectrum. I would submit to the council, you're a lot closer to the city of Bel Air situation, but I wanted to give you some of the things that are being done, and Glenn cited one of them, a 15-second, it doesn't change any more often than 15 seconds. There's all that sort of stuff that you're really trying to do to make it, it's not assaulting the senses, it's not having billboards that are flashing every 5 seconds with a different message that distracts people from driving a vehicle on I-4. You're trying to avoid that, but you don't have that here. So I wanted to give you two different ends of the spectrum and give you a basis for starting to discuss what's the right fit for City of Bel Air Beach.
Patty?
Councilmember Gunn?
Sure. Glenn Gunn?
Yeah, I just had a couple other inputs. One was, as I read through, say, Tampa's inputs there, just some of the phraseology and some of the technology sounds old, so I would have to question how old some of these guidelines are, and whether or not they're actually keeping up with the changing times and technology. One would be the lighting and how it's based on GPS to figure out sunrise and sunset versus ambient lighting conditions, because on days when you have cloud cover or overcast, you're going to want to tone down the lights a little bit or whatever. The other thing is it talks about foot candles and that sort of thing, and one of the things that comes out of the typical best practice studies is you start throwing out all of these measurements, and who's in charge of measuring it, and how is it measured, and how do you know when they're out of calibration or something like that. So there are some more realistic approaches to some of this stuff, and I just think we just probably need to incorporate some of that in as well. Thanks.
When we passed this sign ordinance, we said we were going to go back and deal with the digital, so I guess we have to deal with the digital. And I'd like to see this council, which ends in March, deal with this, okay? I don't have a problem with this going out to the planning board and/or the Citizens Advisory Committee, but it would have to be turned around quickly. Because for us to make this law, it would have to be no later than on the February agenda. We'd have February and we'd have March and we could pass it. And if we can't do that, then I'm not in favor of turning it out to anyone, then we make the decision as council. But, you know, Fred, it's not a demerit, but there's no way I can digest Tampa's thing by just doing this and trying to run a meeting. So I need to study this. There's a lot of information in it for Tampa. I did read Bel Air's, and it's really easy to understand, but there's not a lot in it. That's why it's easy. And I mean, so I think maybe somewhere's in between the two, because the other thing looks like you need to be an engineer to understand it. So I don't know. Maybe we can get something that is workable. How we do it, again, I don't have a problem with it, but it would have to be turned around on our desks, basically, for the January work session. I don't believe, Lynn, we normally have a December work session, right? He's shaking his head no, so it would be January. So that would give them a month and a half. If they can do it, wonderful. If not, then we have to move forward as a council, because we really should put something together. It's our sign ordinance, and we need to fix it, and we passed it partial.
I'd like to see the council and the committee working on it simultaneously. I'd like to see what they come back with, and I think each of us should take this. This is a good starting point, and pick it apart, add to it, see what it is we like, don't like about it, and maybe compile it. Just hand it over hand it back to Fred, let him compile it into a document that's maybe all of our input combined. And we can do that without actually violating any sunshine law, and then we compare that to what the Citizens Committee, Advisory Committee recommends. Maybe by that time we'll be able to reach a consensus on something. I don't think it's going to be that difficult, because I think we all know what we want. It's just a matter of, okay, how do we put it in writing and give us something to vote on? It's certainly, to Mr. Gunn's point, does not need to be overly technical, because who's going to be the judge of that? So there you go.
What about the time frame?
Well, and since we don't have a work session in December, when is the next citizen advisory meeting?
Tomorrow.
Tomorrow, okay. All right, well.
It's not on the agenda, but I could give it out to them. What's on the agenda tomorrow is the Gulf Boulevard undergrounding and the American Rescue.
Yeah.
Again, I don't have a problem with it, but we shouldn't kill it by sending it to committee. So I'm only in favor of that if we can move this. There should be an ordinance here for February the latest. That's plenty of time. If you have to meet twice, you meet twice in a month. You know, it's supposed to be a SWAT team kind of thing where you come after an issue. Well, here's an issue. And, but I think it's incumbent on this council to not leave this for another council to clean up. That's my feeling. I don't know how everybody else feels.
Well, not only that, but this is nowhere near as difficult as what we had to do for the residences. This should be very simple, very easy to clean up and wrap it up. And let's move forward.
Leslie, I think you wanted to say something. Looked like you did.
Looking through
Talk
this-
into the mic, because I can't
Looking
hear
through
you.
the Tampa ordinance, the dwell time seems to be the key thing in there. So you can't change it more than 15, less than 15 seconds, and you can't have movement, and messages are not supposed to. I mean, that sort of stuff I think is pretty basic. And then I think we need to look at, shall I say, the operating manual for the sign. I guess Kyle finally figured out how to get it going this week, and see what's included in that and how we can incorporate that into our sign ordinance.
Point. Yeah. Patty?
Councilmember Gunn?
Yeah, along with the dwell time, one last timing issue is the transition times, typically no more than a second. I think that's one last thing that probably needs to be considered in this, but it goes back to the planning and zoning considerations for this thing, whether it's going to be a by right kind of thing, anybody can incorporate it. How you're going to partition this thing so that it's restricted to high-use traffic areas and not residential streets or that sort of thing. And then the one last thing is just who's going to go ahead and take a look at this thing, whether it's a by right, like I said, or a special use permit. How do you want to handle that? So there are some other considerations just besides just the technical aspects of this thing that we may want to consider. Thanks a lot.
Anyone else? What's our consensus? Do we want to move this forward with the committees, with the time constraints, that we basically have this ready for discussion by our January work session?
It's up to the council.
That's what I'm asking.
That works.
Works for Leslie, works for Robin, works for me,
I'm fine with it.
works for Dave. Frank?
I'm against any type of digital sign. So,
Okay.
Judge against the aesthetics of the city. I remember going door to door. I remember years before, people were complaining, and we had those blue banners on the telephone pole, welcome to Bel Air Beach. What are we doing, they're telling me, okay? We want this nice, quiet little neighborhood. Now we got a big sign out there, welcome to Bel Air Beach. I don't know if there's mental health issues in this city or something. Whatever.
Well, we have a digital sign, now we have to control it.
I know,
And that's what we're doing.
That's right.
I don't like the digital sign either, but now that we have the digital sign, we've got to do something, or we have one in everybody's front yard. So I'll just take that as you don't even want to go forward with the regulations, or?
I don't like it.
Okay,
I guess I will go for it.
okay, put some regulations in place. Patty, what do we have on the line with Glenn and Rita?
Glenn?
Yes.
Anything else?
Consensus?
Consensus?
Well, no, I kind of feel, like I've said all along, do this thing right, and don't, if we're going to do it right, and I don't feel the artificially imposed time constraint on here. We've got through the lion's share of the sign orders that we were interested in. Again, I think there's some aspects of this thing we just want to make haste slowly with, especially when it comes to how you want to measure it or manage it as a planning and zoning issue or a by right kind of ordinance. That's my way of feedback. I can go either way, but I just personally don't see we should rush this thing through and come up with a piece of garbage in, garbage out. If we want to do it, I say do it right. Either look at it after the first blush and say, yeah, we're ready to go, or no, let's do this thing right. That's my way of it. Thank you.
Rita?
Rita?
Yes, I'm going to actually agree 100% with Councilmember Glenn Gunn.
Okay, so I got 4 people who want to move it forward with the deadline constraints. Leslie Dave, myself, and Rob, and that's a consensus, so that's the way we move forward. With the other things noted, if it becomes death by committee, I'm not in favor of it. I think that's what the four folks here have said, so.
What's going to happen? This is going to be brought up. We're going to make a best attempt to come up with something. Number one, I think digital signs, and then it's got in brackets illuminated signs. It's a little deceiving about what, and it's not your fault, but that's not the entire focus. It's signs, illuminated signs, period, for Gulf Boulevard. That's where it's happening at. And once we reach what we think is something that we may be able to vote upon, well, we have to reach a consensus. If it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. But that, I think it's a noble goal, and I'll do my best to try to push that forward.
All right. Fred and Lynn, any questions before we move it on? If I need a break, it's an hour and 23 minutes. Item 3, discussion of Attorney General opinion in public records. Ben Reeves.
Yes, Mayor and Council, I asked the city attorney 3 months ago to get some clarification, because we've got 2 or 3 different versions of what is and what isn't. And he gave us this information, returned it. Patty and I looked at it. We talked about it. Patty gave him some comments also. And I'm just trying to get some direction from the council, because we keep coming back to a public records request that we're not able to fulfill because of, as an example, somebody says, I get paid $80 an hour, and that's what I want to provide the public records. And we just need to get this resolved, because our policy says that, you know, the public records are supposed to be given to the clerk, you know, if you have, you know, if you use another source. Or it's on the council member that doesn't use the clerk as their depository. If everybody used the clerk as their depository, we wouldn't have any problem with turning out a public records request. Right now, Patty, she could probably give you an update of how many public records requests are in line at the current time.
Patty?
They're in different process right now, but approximately 12. Some of them are very complicated, and some are very simple, but I can't keep putting the simple ones ahead of the complicated ones, you know, because, you know, I tried that. I tried to just do a quick response, and then it was kind of like, that's not fair to the people who are waiting. I should be spending time on that, even if I am only able to spend, you know, a portion of time on it. It should be devoted to that first request, not the other one. So, yeah, it's, and then trying to wait for responses for records that I don't have that weren't copied to me is another part of it. So right now there is approximately 12.
So Fred put together kind of a couple draft questions, and we just want, you know, we were trying to get clarification, because we've got 2 different sides of it. One says, no, you don't get paid for it. Another clarification says, yes, you do get paid for it. And Fred and I have talked about this, and I guess what I'm asking is so the staff gets clear guidance on what we need to do or not need to do, and how we need to proceed forward. And so that's why I was asking about an Attorney General's opinion.
Were you asking this question for records requests that are made of the city, of records that are being held by an outside person, not the city itself?
Yeah, they would be held by, you know, they could be held, you know, they could be held by the mayor, they could be held by Frank, they could be held by Rob.
Okay.
That's what I'm, you know, and the clarification is, because this is another issue. Can Robin submit to say, and I'm gonna use, I don't know what she gets paid an hour, but I'll say she gets $200 or something, or maybe more than that, I don't know. But does she have the right, you know, is that how you charge for public records? I'm just trying to get clarification, and that's why.
Why? Why are you trying to get that clarification for an outside record holder?
Because the city clerk has received several correspondence that says, I either get this or I'm gonna do this, and we need to resolve this, one way or the other. That's all.
You do. I don't know that you do. I really don't. Because we're crystal clear, that's why I asked you the question, what happens when it's a city record? We know what that policy is. You make a request of the city clerk. If it's a simple request, she can provide it to you, sometimes free of charge. If it's only going to take a minute or two, give me a copy of last week's agenda. She'll shoot that over to you at no charge. You make a complex records request, then there's a fee and there's a voluminous records charge. We know what that is, okay? But the way I see it, and I read the law, and I know that both backward and forward, okay? When a request is made of you, an anonymous request usually, because usually the person, if they're going to identify themselves, can go right to the records holder. So an anonymous request is made of Patty. Your job is strictly an intermediary. You're not there to judge whether the request is reasonable, whether the person should be paid or not. You're strictly the intermediary. It's up to that records holder. And the law is very clear, quite frankly. I've given it to Fred multiple times. I have it here. I'll read it into the record if you'd like. But every person on every committee, on every group is what's known as an agency. There are multiple people holding multiple records. I'll give you an example. There was a Facebook site for this city that was held by one individual. Multiple council members received information about the city. That site's no longer up. I hope everybody archived all that information they got. Now, if a records request is made of one of those individuals who received that information, it's between that person and the requester. You're simply the intermediary. So I don't see that this is necessary at all. If there's a disagreement when it comes to the price charged, okay, because the law says reasonable, and the Attorney General is not going to define that. There's case law on that. Reasonable means fair, customary, applicable. I don't think Robin can charge $500 an hour. I don't charge $300 an hour, okay? Because you have to go by what the lowest value can be done. So Robin could get a clerk if necessary to pull a record, and that might be $75 an hour. That's what the county charges, $71 an hour. But reasonable is in the eye of the beholder. So I don't know why we're doing this, because there's already a dispute process, and it's not coming to the city manager. And as I said publicly once before, it's not coming to the city council, as one citizen did, and it got the city into a massive lawsuit. Okay? The process is to go to the court. That's how you do it. That's Florida's law. If you are refused records, you have the right to go to a court, seek those records, and get legal fees. So I don't know why we're spending city money on our city attorney who has to write a memo of law, on a city attorney who's come out publicly and said that these people are supposed to be paid. The law says it clearly. I don't know why we're doing this, other than to just, what, cover our tracks? I don't get it. Why are we doing it?
Patty came to me and asked me, all I'm trying to do is get some clarification. If the council doesn't want to do it, it doesn't matter to me. I'm just trying to get clarification. She's got, as she said, 12 or whatever amount of backlog, and people keep sending letters to her, or the people requesting it send a letter and say, when am I going to get this? When am I going to get this? And I'm just trying to find out what the council wants to do.
Have you, when they say, when am I going to get this, and there's a fee attached, have we said when you pay the fee?
Well, that's not me, I don't have any, I'm just passing on what.
No, because the reason.
I don't get involved.
All right, the reason I'm asking is because, is what the chairman just stated about the law. I had a public records request with the FWC, which came back with an exorbitant amount of money. And they claim they don't have a main server, okay? Each little agency has their own computer, so they have to redact the information from there, and retract it and all like that. So their bottom line was, if you don't like it, take it to court. So it's either pay $3,000 or whatever, or take it to court. So I'm saying, when the person asks, because I have an outstanding bill. When the person asks for the public record, and they repeatedly ask, because I believe the law says a reasonable amount of time to submit it, do we say, well, you owe this amount of money? And do they say, we're not paying it, or?
Talking to the mic. I'm sorry, I didn't hear you, Warren.
No, I'm saying, what's the answer? I mean, when the person makes the second request, third request, and they say, well, you owe this amount of money, and they don't pay it.
You have to provide the record.
Great, I understand that, but is the record, what's the statute of limitations, I guess, for it hanging out there? Until, my opinion is until you pay.
Oh, you mean
Take
that?
it to court.
Yeah, I had 2 requests in the fall. They were voluminous. They would require redaction. One of them was illegal, from somebody who should know better. And I said, here's what it's going to cost. Here's an estimate. It's an estimate. And neither party elected to pay that estimate. And that was just an estimate. I will not make the mistake I made last time, which is to give the city the records without getting the deposit. You can ask for a deposit.
That's my mistake.
Yeah, my mistake too, but burn me once, you will not burn me twice. The problem is that the city does not have a say in this matter, only for its own records. This may help. There's 2 paragraphs which define this law, and it is crystal clear. And this is the state statute, okay? Fred Riley, this is a letter I sent to him October 18th for you records folks. Go ask Patty for a copy of it. Section 119.011, paragraph 2, Florida statute, defines agency, okay? To say it's any state, county, district authority, or municipal officer, that's us, department, division, board, bureau, commission, or other separate unit of government created or established by law, including for the purposes of this chapter, Commission on Ethics, the Public Service Commission, the Office of Public Counsel, and any other public or private agency, person, partnership, corporation, or business entity acting on behalf of any public agency. So would we all agree that we're agencies, and so is every member of the Parks Board, of the Planning Board, the Board of Adjustment, the Citizen Advisory Committee, and every other committee we could possibly conceive of? That's that. Then you go to the next paragraph. 119.074D, Florida statute. I'm just going to cut right to the chase, okay? The agency may charge, in addition to the actual cost of duplication, a special service charge, which shall be reasonable and shall be based on the cost incurred for such extensive use of information, technology services, or the labor cost of the personnel providing the service that is actually incurred by the agency or attributable to the agency for the clerical and supervisory assistance required, or both. If you're an agency, you get paid for your work. We're all agents. In the case of Robin, renowned surgeon, I don't know, $1,000 an hour or whatever, okay? 500, a million, whatever. She doesn't get that. She can hire a clerk to do that. She gets whatever the cost of the clerk is to dig through the records. I did not, in my situation, Leslie, I'll come right to you as soon as I finish. I did not charge my highest rate. I charged the lowest rate. But the lowest rate that I charged is with the state of New Jersey. And by the way, New Jersey always pays its bill. City of Bel Air Beach didn't. And that's another law, Frank, to know. If someone did not pay your bill, you do not have to give them any more records until they pay the prior bill. We have Leslie next, and then we're going to Frank. Go ahead, Leslie.
I'm looking at our City of Bel Air Beach Public Records Policy, Section 4.3, and it says that elected officials will be given email addresses, and it says if an elected official, city staff member, or employee utilize personal email accounts / addresses to conduct municipal business. then the city clerk shall be copied on all email correspondence to ensure full accountability under the Public Records Law of Florida. Now, it's shall, legally required. It's not, there's may and then there's shall, it means you gotta do it. And then if you look at Public Records Policy 1.7, failure to comply, the failure of an officer or employee of the city of Bel Air Beach to comply with this policy shall result in disciplinary action by the city and any penalty set forth in section 119.10 of the Florida statutes. So, I mean, it's clear that we're provided with email addresses to use. If we don't, we are required to copy the city clerk so that this issue doesn't come up. And then the city clerk gets to charge whatever the city clerk does, but it's a violation of the Public Records Policy to not copy Patty on all those city emails
And
from a
that's-
private server.
I'm going to add that that's where all you do whenever you respond to someone, no matter what email address you're sending from, you click CC and put Patty's email address in there, and you're no longer the custodian. If you're not doing that, this is where I'm struggling. If you don't do that, well then, why is Patty responsible for gathering private, they're public request records, but they're being held privately, and she gets caught in the middle of it. It should be, this is all the records I have. If there's any more, you'll need to contact Dave Gaddis, because he may be holding records that I don't have. But I don't think that the city clerk should be drugged into evidence gathering for whoever it may be, whenever she doesn't have those records. And then the city gets dragged into this negotiation process, which is a complete waste of time and costs the city way more money than it should have. Unless I'm reading into this the wrong way, I believe that's the way we should be handling this.
Yeah, we're reading into it the wrong way. This city thinks it can do what it wants. I didn't vote for that policy. And I went back today prepping for this meeting and looked back on the vote and what I said. And somebody, I won't embarrass the person, called a point of order because I was giving legal advice. Leslie, you're an attorney. I believe when we were running, you said you were like tops in your class. I'm going to give you that. Okay, that's a great honor. Since when does a city get to dictate the communications and how an elected official shall communicate with anyone? That is not constitutional. This policy is worthless. And by the way, it's under-inclusive because Mr. Gaddis and Jody Shirley, Rita Swope were all members of that site and all received city information. And I wonder if Patty got copies of all that information on that Facebook page that alleged to be a Bel Air Beach information site. Because there's a bunch of people that are looking for that information. I don't think you got that. I don't think you got that at all. And I'll bet you some of these people may not have kept screen caps. But I'll also bet you maybe some other people did. So let me tell you, I don't like the policy. I don't like the idea that you can tell anyone who to communicate with. Now granted, the state of Florida makes all communications public records, but you have to request them. That's a big difference than CCing Patty on every memo. Maybe I don't want the city to see what I wrote. Now, if somebody comes along, like the telepathic person we had that one day walked into headquarters, supposedly without being tipped off, and said, I want the memo from Fred Riley to Joe Manzo on the Attorney General's opinion, and I want to stay anonymous. Why does Patty get dragged into it? Because some people, fully operating within the law, Dave, don't want to identify themselves. But they don't have to go through Patty. They can make the anonymous request of me, you, and anyone else on council, or anybody on any of these boards. So they don't have to go through Patty. But they're not the arbiters. Lynn Reeves, Patty Gentry, they're not supposed to sit there and say, well, your number's too high, or gee, Frank Banker, you charged me this number, I think it's too much. That's for the person who's making the records request. And if they think that Frank or I or Robin, whomever is out of line, they can come back and tell you, or they can take it right to the court, like Frank was just told. We just had it with a board, a county board that I was looking for something with. And they were like, here's what it's gonna cost. If you don't want it, don't bother us. And they're not charging $5 an hour. They're charging like $70 an hour. So if they can get $70 an hour for a clerical person, I think I'm worth 75. Yeah, Patty,
Glenn Gunn.
go ahead.
Yeah, my opinion is that I've heard the two different sides, and this is precisely why I think we need to seek an AGO opinion on this, is we need a third-party impartial intervention to resolve these issues. At the forefront is the city has a policy on public records, and the question is does it hold water with respect to the sunshine of public records for the state of Florida? Because more importantly, if someone chooses to keep their own public records and not copy the city clerk on it, our policy says they are responsible for whatever comes out of that. And the question is does the public go straight to the records holder, and is the city removed out of the intermediary position on that sort of thing? I find it kind of, I guess I'm kind of stymied by a public official who says if you want this record, you go to court and ask for it, because everybody else seems to be taking the high road of hey, I'm a public official, elected official, and there's a policy for handling this, and I understand not only the written laws regarding public records, but I understand the intent, and that's kind of the way I'm going to align my affairs with this thing. The other thing that's being held is there's a bunch of pending requests that are being held hostage with this thing, because the person who holds those records is saying I haven't been paid, and therefore I'm not giving you any more information on this thing. So I think at this point, it's incumbent to seek a third-party and impartial opinion on this thing to resolve it. Otherwise, it will never, ever be resolved. And whatever comes down, hey, that's question asked, question answered. I understand it, but I think we need to move forward and resolve this question once and for all. Thank you.
Let me unstymie you here. When it comes to a public records request, there's nothing that I know of that's being held back for lack of payment. Okay? Patty, I'm going to put you on the spot. How many records are you holding back right now because the agency refuses to tender those records? You're not holding any of mine. Who else are you holding? Where the agency, an elected official or anyone else, is not giving those records because they haven't been paid.
I don't hold,
Right now, you have 12 records requests. How many are being held back because the person refuses to hand those records over?
I'm going to answer your question, I'm just not sure it's what you're asking me, so just tell me. Whatever record I can provide, if they ask me for a portion of this, this, and this, if I can give them Part A and I can calculate a cost for that, then I give them that and they pay. If I'm waiting for someone else, or someone has told me that, they won't provide it, or they don't have anything, then it just moves forward. I'm not holding anyone hostage. I don't hold any records back. I never do that. So is that
I'm
answer?
just answering what
Yeah, I just want to make sure I'm answering your
Something's
question.
being held back.
Yeah.
Okay? And if something is held back, and Glenn, let me clarify about taking the high road. There's the law of the state of Florida. And it says, if you don't get a record that you feel you're entitled to, for whatever reason, the person privileged the record, the person refused to provide it, the person wants to charge Frank Bankert $3,000 for it, your only option, repeat, only option, is to go to court. That's what the legislature passed. It's not my rule, it's not my preference, it's what the rule is. We play by the rules. So go ahead, ask the Attorney General, what do you do? Ask the Attorney General if your law is constitutional. There's another alternative to that. You can test that law in a court and see if it's constitutional or not. You're going to have discipline on an elected official, Leslie, for not giving a record over? Discipline me. I got tons of records, and you use your own personal server too, and so do several other people. So I'll tell you what, discipline me. You wouldn't dare. Go ahead. Who's next?
So what's the consensus? Is the council moving forward on this, or back?
Let's see, hang on, I want to hear from the citizens. Citizens. No one wants to speak. Back to council. Where do we want to go with this? I know where I want to go. Table this thing. We have no standing, and it's a waste of city money. We've wasted enough on this records request nonsense. The law is set. No one has come back to me with a legal argument that's contrary to what I read into the record. There's no confusion on that. Does anybody think we're not agencies? Then agencies is entitled to be paid. Don't confuse what the Florida League of Cities says is best practices with what law is. The law is crystal clear on this, and the Attorney General is not going to define reasonable. Fred, you will need to write a legal opinion on this, a legal memorandum of law, and that's going to cost quite a bit of money. And you also have to have an opinion, because it says before we seek the Attorney General's opinion, we need to seek your opinion. And you've already given us opinion in public session on this, and privately, I think, with advice to individuals. So, I think we're wasting money.
I think we need to move on to something else.
Okay, well, let's, before we move this on, we gotta decide where we're going with it, because we need to tell them whether we're going forward or not. It's not a vote, but I'm not going forward with it. Leslie, what do you want to do?
I'm going to look in the disciplinary action by the city and penalties set forth in section 119.10 of the Florida statutes.
I don't know what that means.
It sounds like a table.
Like to take.
Yeah.
Table in it? Table? Table? 7:49, anybody needing a break?
Use a stretch.
10 minutes? Till 8. We're back on at 8 o'clock. Item 4. Best practices, discussion of ways to improve information sharing, transparency, and management effectiveness. Staff report of each council advisory committee. So, all put on by the city manager?
Mayor, this was put on by Councilmember Gunn.
Okay, it doesn't indicate that. So this is by Glenn Gunn. Glenn?
Yeah, I think in the interest of time and for better communication purposes, I would request that we just move this one to the next work session so that we can discuss this face to face rather than trying to discuss this online with the inherent communication problems, if that's okay.
Does anyone have an objection to that? Move it to the next work session? Make Glenn's suggestion?
That's fine.
All right, everybody's good with it. Glenn, just one thing, if there's any, there's no backup for this, if there's any information that you might have or anything we could read beforehand, it might be helpful, just a piece of information.
No, I really don't have anything. I will probably kind of outline it before the next meeting. I can certainly do that, but I think it's just to bring into alignment a little more structured reporting from the city manager, the city attorney, and the city clerk to give us an idea of what objectives they have over the next coming period, what kind of problems they expect, and what kind of solutions they have for us. And also to get some of this in front of us into the background package prior to the council meetings so that we can think about things and maybe ask questions rather than just walk into the council meeting and be kind of blindsided by an issue or having had time to think about an issue. That's all I'm trying to solve here.
It's a good idea, Glenn, and if you have anything in advance, that's great. Patty, would you please put this on our January 2022 work session?
Yes.
Thank you.
Mayor,
Yeah.
can I suggest, we've been here for 2 hours, we've gotten through, well, now 4 things. Can we put a cap on the meeting tonight that at 10 o'clock we're history or
I was
whatever time?
I was kind of figuring that. Does anybody have an objection to that?
10 o'clock, 9 o'clock?
10
whatever.
o'clock? Yeah, we'll see how we feel. 10 o'clock the latest, and if anybody gets, particularly tired, we can always do it quicker. It's 8 o'clock, we might be able to get through the rest of this stuff. Some of it's pretty quick, I think. Maybe. All right, number 5, discussion on beach mobility mats. We saw the presentation last time. There's some information in our packet over here, and I'll turn it over to City Manager, because I think you were going to look into some of the feasibility on this, right?
Yes, and it appears the requirements, that after talking to a city south of here and looking at some of the information they sent me, it appears we wouldn't qualify.
You say would not?
Would not qualify.
Why is
Because
that?
there has to be a 175-foot open area at the end of the mat. And I put a picture in your packet, and we have 167 feet from the entrance to the water. So it appears we won't qualify for it. I did get a sample. This is what it looks like, and I'll pass it around. So if there's something that's changed, I'll go back to the FDEP and find out, but they think it's 175 feet, and that's what the previous city said, and we don't have any beach that's 175 feet. The other thing they mentioned was, maintenance-wise, there's one city south that they sweep it every day, and then they, it's Treasure Island, I believe it was, they sweep it once a week, but they have to repair divots in it, which basically the sand, from going across it. So there's quite a bit of maintenance to it. But that's where we're at with it, and that's all I want to tell you.
Well, I was reading the Bel Air area neighborhood news, and they actually have a picture of this thing, and it stretches the length of the beach. It's quite hard for everybody to see it. But my concern isn't, so much that, now we know we have a space issue, but if you're going sideways on this thing, I'm looking at the thickness of that, I'm just wondering if that becomes something that somebody who's not paying attention might trip and break the neck on. So, if you're walking, not for the person who has a mobility issue, but for the kid who's running, chasing a football on the beach, all of a sudden they're going to catch their foot in the edge of this thing and go flying. So I had some concerns with this in terms of safety. But, we'll table it, I guess, for now, unless anybody wants to go further. It sounds like it's a no-can-do unless we get a little more beach renourishment, I guess, right?
Right.
Okay, that's
So
what
I don't see a need to table it,
we're just
never really.
It's not going forward, yeah, it's not going forward. Anybody have any objection? Leslie, it's looking like we might be done at 9 at this rate. Now this will mess it up. Discussion of letter to Town of Bel Air Shore regarding beach access lots. So before we get any further, Fred Riley, tell me if I'm saying anything incorrectly. Since we're not voting tonight, because obviously this can affect me personally, I don't have to recuse myself from this. I'm going to do something which everybody's going to probably love. I'm going to say very, very little. So if there's anything that's incorrect, I'll say something. But other than that, I know how Bel Air Shore is going to answer this. I think personally we're probably not going to get much from it. But with that said, I'll open up the floor. Anyone? Fred?
I'll tell you what my rationale was. My rationale was to reflect what the city council discussed. So I itemized the 3 things that the city council discussed, and then requested action, which is basically that they comply with their own ordinance and their code provisions. And the thing I did not do was go back and recount past sins or past alleged sins. I think what is more productive is to try and move forward with the neighbor and have a better relationship in the future with the neighbor and simply point out that you are asking the neighbor to comply with the code that governs that city. So that's the rationale.
I like this, I like the way you drafted this. It may very well be the case that not everyone on their commission is aware of what's been going on. I can't speak for them, I don't know, but this puts it in writing that we have concerns, and let's send it to them and see what comes back.
Anyone else on the council?
I would agree with Dave.
Disagrees?
I agree with Dave. I think it's a good starting point. I think the diplomatic approach is best to start with and then go from there.
I don't know, maybe I'm in the twilight zone here. I mean, I checked, not to say I don't trust you, but I checked the ordinance, you copied it word for word, right? And I'm thinking, what's the problem? It's crystal clear, all right?
Well-
We issue the permits, we charge the fees, or whatever they, the fees and everything like that. So what does this letter get us at the end of the day? I guess that's my question.
I think, and I'm with you, because the rules are there, so why aren't you following your own rules? To me, it's calling out that just to remind you, here are the rules, and we're asking you to follow them. But we shouldn't have to do that.
I
I agree.
understand that, okay, I'm not that, what I'm saying is, what do we do with the next step? I guess that's my question. I mean, if they come back with no response, or would you say, would you report this or whatever? What I'm saying is, I mean, what's the answer to this?
So Frank, I have a one-sentence note here. So what if they don't? And that's exactly what I heard. So what are you going to do?
That's
To
my
me,
question.
it's a nice letter. It's a wonderful letter. I already know the answer. This complaint has already found its way to them. They are not going to do anything on this. They have proffered sworn testimony, the fact that they believe it's their lot. That's it. That's what they're going to tell you. So I guess what Frank is saying is, what do we do next? What do you do next? I can't vote on it.
No, I'll tell you my response to that. My response is the diplomatic approach, thanks Robin for saying that, is to start with the neighbor that you want to have a better relationship with, start in a diplomatic way, ask for them to comply with their own code without threatening them, and if in the future there is, continued refusal to follow their own code, then at some point you'll have to address what step you should take. And that's really the only thing that you can do. The letter is a reasonable start, and it's a reasonable thing. I would, in talking to another attorney, I would say, they didn't threaten you, they didn't threaten to go to court. All they were asking for you is to comply with your own code provision. And the code provision is to acknowledge, it's written the way it is because of the special relationship between this city and that city, and the fact that the access lot is there for the benefit of citizens of this city. That's why the code provisions are written the way they are, and they should be adhering to that. They should show some comedy, C-O-M-I-T-Y, and not C-O-M-E-T-Y. But they should show some comedy and resolve themselves to adhere to their own code in the future. That's what a reasonable person would do. Y'all may be, with your projection of what reaction you get, you may be 1,000% right. But this is how you take the high ground, and that's really what you're trying to do with this letter that I prepared.
No, I want to take the high ground. I want to have a great relationship. I'm a resident that goes at the end of my street, there's Bel Air Shores. Some of you guys are, they're at the end of your blocks or whatever, it's Bel Air Beach. So I deal with it every day, and I've talked to some of these residents, great people, all right, and I want to have a great relationship with them. I think you establish a great relationship by not violating your own ordinances too, you know? And everyone is allowed to make a mistake. But once you repeat the mistake over and over and over again, it becomes intentional in my view. All right, so what would be the next course of business if they didn't do this?
If they don't, if you send this letter and you find out that they are refusing to comply with their law, and I'm just going to pick something for example purposes, they're issuing a parking pass in the future for somebody that's from Timbuktu, and Timbuktu is in either city. There's no basis for them to issue it to somebody from Timbuktu, and they do that for the next year. It's a year-long parking permit. Then you have a basis to say you've blatantly violated your own code provision, and we ask you in a reasonable manner, and you've refused to do that. At some point, I mean, there are all sorts of legal options. One of them is seeking an injunction.
Okay, do they have the ability to change their ordinance and saying that we can now issue permits?
They can't change it and make it inconsistent with the documents that create these special relationships.
That was my thought.
Or they shouldn't. I mean, they can change their code anytime they choose if their city council decides to do that. But if they change it and it's inconsistent with the trust documents, that's not going to solve the problem. That will exacerbate the problem.
Now, if a car parks there without a Bel Air Beach sticker, they can be towed.
No,
You can't tow them?
ticket.
That's it.
We proposed towing and they laughed at us.
We proposed ticketing, I think they laughed at you.
Well, no, they actually laughed at us a couple meetings ago. They actually said, and I'm paraphrasing, but it's pretty much verbatim, oh, yeah, they think they own the lots and they want to keep the revenue from towing. I was here when the suggestions were made about towing. I was in that work session. I think I was the one who brought it up because our car got towed in Tampa. Never once did we talk about keeping the revenue. As a matter of fact, my understanding is the tow truck company tows it, and they keep the revenue. That's how they do this for you for free, basically. So they laughed at us and they bastardized our suggestion. That's two commission sessions back if you need to request it from them. As for your proof, no need to gather it. It's all out there. Your public records request, their city attorney asking for the passes. There's probably over 100 of them that they've issued. Some of them have been duplicated 15 and 20 times over. Example, Alvarez Construction. Example, the Pinellas Film Commission. They filled up 2 lots with that. They know full well what they're doing. They passed a call ordinance revision, which, as you know, you can't do, but they did it anyway, giving their city clerk the ability to issue passes. So it's there. They're doing it. They're well aware of it. They don't care. But by all means, if this is a good starting point, best of luck. Go in peace, and let me know how you make out. Anyone else? Citizens? Council? You have consensus that Fred can move forward with the letter?
Yes.
Yes.
I'm just not going to vote on it, but go in peace, my son. Okay?
Okay, so to recap, the letter as I wrote it was fine, and I should send it, and I will do so immediately.
Please copy me on that letter if you would.
Pardon?
There's a typo.
Except for the typo that Leslie has pointed out.
It's Bel Air
That
Shore,
she
by
was
the way.
on board
The
with
heading,
it, too.
the heading says Bel Air Shores. It's Bel Air Shore. I don't know if that's the typo Leslie found, but there's, or is there more?
From the city council's perspective, these points are legitimate concerns, you see access, blah, 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 blah. And it says, see section 30-15 57, it should 30-51.
And Fred, do me a favor, please copy me on that. So,
I'm not doing too well, I got 2 demerits and 1 nutting, so.
nah, we're easy graders. You'll copy me, Fred?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir. Anything else on that?
Actually, I'll copy the whole
Copy the
city
whole
council.
council, that's great. Discussion, on item 7 now, discussion on section 94-217, parking mobile homes, RVs, boats, trailers. Frank Bankard brought this up. Frank?
First, Leslie, if you have your red pen out, I'm sure you'll be correct. When, no, I had a citizen brought to my attention, he also brought to another council member's attention. He doesn't have a dock, fortunately, and this is a boating community. And I didn't know it until he brought it to my attention that you actually need a permit before you park your boat in your driveway for 24 hours. And a lot of these boat owners park their boats outside of our city limits. He was hoping that we could probably provide a lot, but that's not going to happen because ground's just too expensive. But anyway, what he's requesting is to charge his batteries, and a lot of these other boat owners have the same argument. Be able to bring your boat in maybe 4 or 5 o'clock in the evening, put it on charge, pull it out 6 o'clock, 8 o'clock in the morning or whatever, and go boating for the day without going to City Hall and trying to obtain a permit first. So I would like to just modify that section of the code and eliminate the 24-hour to 48 hours. You're going to have a boat in your driveway for more than even 36 hours.
So 24 free, basically. After that, you need a permit.
I think that's fair, because if you think about, it includes RVs. If you think about somebody who has an RV and they're gonna go on an early morning trip, they're just gonna park it overnight to load it up. You don't wanna have to get a permit for that. I think that's reasonable. If you're gonna park it in your driveway for 2 weeks, that's.
Yeah, and he doesn't want it in his driveway for 2. He doesn't want to, I don't think anybody wants it, okay? 3 or 4 days they don't want it, but bring it in after he gets done work, charge it up, and next morning he's out.
I think it,
Just a comment.
Yeah.
We get numerous complaints about boats and trailers, RVs. Code enforcement does. Numerous complaints about these. And unfortunately, just to clarify, what the current ordinance says, you get a permit 3 times a year for 48 hours. Okay. That's for boats. RV's a little different scenario. That's, you just call and tell us so we can tell the code enforcement person that you're bringing it to load and unload, okay? But, Councilmember Gunn did some study on this for code enforcement, and I gave you a copy of that. Well, 31% of the parking issues, so 1/3 of them are somebody calling us to tell us, I don't want to boat here. We got an email from one gentleman that said, you need to take a playbook out of Indian Rocks Beach. So, and I'm going to pass this around. That's just some pictures from one street, about 7 blocks. And, the individual that sent that email is not related to Mr. Hinkle, who sent the other email. Danny, when he goes around, he sees the boats and we get complaints about them. So it's not just, and routinely, it's the same people over and over that keep doing it. I don't think, to my knowledge, I don't think we've had probably any complaints about Mr. Hinkle at all. But there's a couple places, and like there's a gentleman on corner of 22nd and Donato. He'll leave his boat there for 2 or 3 days, and then someone calls, You go down there and then he gets kind of feisty with you. So, you know, the thing is, I guess how I look at it, if they took the liberty of at least calling and telling, so code enforcement knew it, so as an example, like a short-term rental, they told me it's their relatives or, you know, this, then, you know, if somebody calls and complains, then, you know, we've got an answer for them. But when they bring it and then it stays there 2 or 3 days, that becomes a problem.
He's only asking for 24 hours, not 2 or 3 days, right? So, I mean, the question is, you know, of course, the same people, that guy you just described, he doesn't care about this, he just gets 1 free day now. Can we live with 1 free day as a convenience to people? I mean, I don't know, your relative just came in and brought the boat and arrived on Saturday and no one's here at headquarters, I mean.
Because I don't think anyone wants what.
No, not permanently, but I mean, it wouldn't bother me if somebody had a boat in their driveway for 24 hours. That just doesn't bother me.
Well,
That's me. Maybe it bothers some people.
The one gentleman, he's on Hibiscus, you know, he said, he kind of, I don't know if you talked to him, Frank, or not, but he sent an email saying, you guys are ridiculous, you need to do what Indian Rocks does. And I'm kind of like, I don't think that's what Bel Air Beach wants to do.
I'm not looking for that either. There's pictures I've seen driving around, I don't want that. I don't think he wants it, he never applied.
Patty, you have some more?
Councilmember Gunn?
Yeah, I'm the guy who reduced the data on that code enforcement stuff. Those 4 items to the left are the 80-20 rule. Those 4 issues eat most of our code enforcement lunch. Landscape is by far the biggest one, and yeah, we really do need a grass release there. But the third one is parking, and as the city manager said, 30% of those issues for parking complaints are boat trailers and RVs parked in driveways. And I think you're getting ready to discuss the possibility of changing an ordinance based on a couple of complaints, and I think the vast majority of people would certainly need to be surveyed before you do that, because what I'm looking at is the data saying most people don't like to walk out their front door and look to the left or right and see a boat or a trailer parked in their neighbor's driveway. The obvious thing of going to a permit system where it's open-ended or something like that, that's not enforceable. You can't do that sort of thing. It's just not going to hold water there. The last thing I would probably throw out there is, what is the real problem here? Is the problem that he's got restricted and has to live by the same ordinance that all of his neighbors live by, or is the problem having to go down to City Hall and ask for a permit? That may be the real problem here, and I would easily support, maybe we have to take a look at the permit application process. Maybe if we could submit a request for a permit online and not have to take time to go down to City Hall or whatever, we could streamline the process and make it much more palatable, but that way it can be monitored and enforced. I think some of the pictures that the city manager took, and again, some of the feedback and the complaints, just doesn't support changing the ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you, Glenn.
I have an opinion on this also. If we don't have some sort of marker on any craft that's allowed to park, how do you know the difference between a boat that's been there for 24 hours and one that's been there for 72 hours? Code enforcement may not see it on the first 2 days. Whenever they're finally caught and they're approached about it, they could easily just say, no, I just put it here. I think that there has to be some way to control it, and if you open it up more, it's already being abused. If you open it up even wider, it's going to be abused even more. If we get more and more relaxed, we will have more boats in the street, in the driveways, and That's not really the design. It's not what we look like in Bel Air Beach. So I'm against it.
Frank, I think I like the idea. I think we're overly strict sometimes. I don't agree with surveying the citizens, despite the comment that was made earlier, not a boating community. There's a lot of people who own boats, and there's also a lot of people who don't. So if you're gonna take a poll, my guess is the people who don't own, who don't have a dog in the fight, are gonna go, no, I don't wanna look at boats in my neighborhood. But in talking to the gentleman that was just here at the break, you know, you bring the boat home, you come home late at night, it's out of the water, now you're supposed to what? Clean it, flush it, and put it away, just so that you can meet this kind of arbitrary rule of 24 hours? I mean, if it bothers somebody that much that there's a boat for 24 hours, you really gotta find something else to be looking at. I do agree that we could come up with a sticker system or something, but then you're going to, on the weekends, impose upon the police or somebody to have to give that sticker. If they fold into City Hall or someone and said, you know, okay, hey, you know, John Jones, such and such street, I put my boat out, you know, give me my marker. Okay, well, who's gonna give them that marker? We're not here 24/7. So enforcement may be a little bit of an issue. I think in principle though, I mean, some stuff that we have is ridiculous, and this is probably one of them, that you can't wash your boat out. I mean, I know you can do it 2 or 3 times a year. I don't know what you do the other 25 times that you take your boat out. And, you know, not everybody has a marina, not everybody has waterfront property, so I think this helps a lot of individuals in the city. And maybe it cuts down some of these code complaints, because we what we don't see on this thing, 9 out of 29, is how many were just there for a day. That we don't know by this data. So, Frank, I'd support it with a little bit of tweaking in terms of how we would, you know, a little regulation as to how we're going to mark it, because I think that becomes the problem.
How do you obtain a permit now? Do you have to come to City Hall, fill out a paperwork, or?
No, it's a card. You make it, most of the time, most of the people are just calling and we email it to them. And they put it on the boat, or some people come and pick it up.
So you can print it out yourself and put it on?
Yeah, it's a, you know, I mean, a good thing is where it says, if you go up to the RVs, it says, a resident who is leaving or going on a trip, they don't have to come and get a permit. All they have to do is call City Hall and let us know, so we can tell the code enforcement, the officers. Because I guarantee you, when it happens routinely, when somebody pulls their RV in the driveway, if it's there more than 24 hours, they're gonna call City Hall and say, hey. And, you know, a lot of times, we don't know how long they've been there. There was a gentleman, he doesn't do it anymore, because the deputy gave him a $160 ordinance violation. But he would bring his, he had one of them tall, high camper things. He'd bring it there, and, you know, he was told 2 or 3 times. He didn't care, give me a ticket. Well, after he got the ticket, he was doing it. But, you know, that's, you know, if they, I guess how I look at it, if they call and let us know, you know, we may not need to do a lot of anything. It's just, we do get a lot of complaints. And, you know, it's unfortunately, it's the same people a lot of times.
I mean, I'm with you, Frank, on this. I think this, to me, goes back to what I've said before. It's about being a good neighbor. You know, do unto others as you want done unto you. What happens if you had somebody that came and stayed with you, that had a boat and parked it overnight, and you were going to go first thing in the morning, and it was only going to be there 10 hours? What happens if you had an RV that you wanted to use? What happens if you had a situation? Wouldn't you want somebody to give you a little leniency? So let's give our neighbors a leniency. I think people have way too much time in the city, and people look out their windows too much at what their neighbors are doing and get up in arms, and I have a lot more stuff going on, so I'm not that neighbor. I could be, but I chose not to, because, hey, my grass is too tall. I'd like somebody to give me an inch leniency, you know, instead of calling the police on my neighbor. And, you know, my next door lot could use a trimming, but I have not called you because I'm going to be, you know, I'm not going to be that neighbor anyway.
That one's on the list.
Well, See, I don't even have to be that person. One of my other neighbors has already probably done it. So, I'm for this because I think like people, obviously the people are going to abuse it how it's standing right now. So obviously, since we already have 9 out of 29, so this ordinance hasn't stopped those. What this will help do is the responsible people like that resident that came, who just want to enjoy his boat, be able to charge it overnight so he could take it out in the morning, and then he's gonna go park it. And he even said, hey, if there was a slip at the marina, he would take it, but there's like a 10-year waiting list. So that's one of our citizens who would enjoy one of those non-resident slips if it became available. So I don't think we should do 48 hours, but maybe how you had it in your email, more than 24. So if it's 24.5 hours, they're in violation, but if it's 23, it's okay?
Yeah, I'm just trying to appease the neighbor. Like I said, I don't have a dog in the fight here. I mean, as the mayor said, as long as it's not more than 24 hours.
I think it's reasonable to say less than 24 hours or not more than 20, however you want to word it. I think it's fair. I mean, what happens if my boat had a technical issue on my dock and I had to put it in my, same with you. What happens if we had to put our boat in our front yard on the trailer for 10 hours while they worked on my dock and then go put it back on? I mean, I'd like someone to say, okay, that's fine. As opposed to having to spend the exorbitant amount of money to try to put it somewhere while my dock got fixed.
That's fair. Frank, I mean, we're not gonna vote on this tonight, okay? So you have yourself, Robin, myself, that's 3 people that have indicated at least, some support. It's not binding, of course. You can move it forward if you'd like. You don't need a consensus to move it forward. You could make you can make the motion to change the ordinance. You've got at least enough for a discussion to get this thing out and get the citizens in. It's a simple change, so I'm not going to say it's a simple change. I think this would be a simple change. Fred will decide actually how much wording needs to be changed, but hopefully it's a simple change, and it seems simple.
It has to be made at the next council session.
Yeah, you can bring it, and you can actually bring that a proposal right up to that council session, but Fred has to change that ordinance, make a draft of it. I mean, you've got at least 3 people, that's a start. You need to win at least 1 person over. Nobody? 4? You got 4.
Yeah,
It's
I
not
would
binding.
say, just a suggestion. So we alleviate the phone calls. If you're gonna have a 24-hour, all I have to do is call City Hall.
Call City Hall.
It's kind of like if you're gonna have a party at your house, all you gotta do is call City Hall, we fill out a form, it's faxed to the,
That's easy.
yeah.
And you copy code on that too, right?
Right.
So, because if they call Saturday and code walks around on Monday and that boat's still there,
Different story.
no mercy. I mean, at that point, really. There's no excuse for that, because we're giving them a break here. Like you say, I feel for you. Let's say you're working on the thing and, it takes a little longer than you think, and, you can take it to a marina for a night. I mean, it's crazy.
Mayor,
Okay.
To appease what you just said, so the guy, City Hall closes at 4:30, the guy works till 5 o'clock, he brings his boat in, he calls at 5 o'clock, leaves a message, that's good enough?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because if they got we don't go out and give the guy a citation.
He's not saying he ever got a citation,
No,
he just wants to eliminate.
I think the deputy talked to him one time, I think, because he saw the boat there.
And see, that way offers some control. There's some control, there's a control factor, whereas, oh, you don't have to call. Well, there needs to be some sort of notification of what my intentions are, what am I doing? And that way it does avoid confusion. I think.
Yeah. Jumped in, but that's all right. Patty?
Glenn,
Yeah, what I was going to say was in response to Robin's remarks, and said, yeah, by far and large, most of our residents are responsible people and do consider their neighbors. But I will also say that there are going to be a small population of people who will take advantage of any given situation. And if they're not monitored, they're going to run with this thing. And those are going to be the boats that are parked out there with trees growing in them or whatever. And I think we could probably all sit around and come up with examples of that kind of aberrant behavior. the codes and ordinances kind of form a baseline of expected behavior within the residents here. And people move to Bel Air Beach because they take a look around and say, wow, there's a nice clean appearance to this city, and I'd really like to live there. So they have to accept those codes and ordinances that go with that sort of thing. And I don't think anybody's out there with a stopwatch saying, hey, you've both been in your driveway for 24 and a half hours and I'm going to write you a citation. I don't think it's that. It's come down to that. But I think you need to have some sort of baseline for an expected behavior in all of these things. And that's what these codes are for. And I would just be cautious of those unexpected consequences, like in a lot of things we consider every time we meet. One of those things is going to be this, and I would just caution us to make haste slowly on this sort of issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Glenn. Anyone else? Frank, you can move it forward. We have no problem, council, with him speaking with Fred Raleigh to the extent necessary. Fred may already have all the information. No problem? No one's indicating a problem. So you can move it forward and we'll see it on the next agenda. Thanks, Frank. Item 8 is review of safety standards. I put this one on after getting a letter from a citizen who actually spoke out at our last meeting. I'm going to ask that we table this one right now. The person's not here. They didn't get advance notice of this quick enough, so they're not able to attend this meeting. I didn't notice, I didn't see this. I see the pictures, I have some questions, I have some concerns, but I think it would be better served if the person who witnessed it would be here and is able to speak about it. Certainly I can make my observations, but we're not going to get anywhere without hearing from Deborah Mall and the other eyewitnesses. So.
Let me ask a question. Didn't we all receive extensive detail of the situation with photographs and a clear description? How much further can she take it other than what we already have? I don't understand why we want to table this.
Because I don't have detail, that's why. I mean, but if you want to go through it, I see a crane hanging over a guy's head. I don't see a hard hat. I don't see that the sidewalk's blocked. I have another person in the audience who was an eyewitness, and I'm sure will come forward and speak up if she so chooses. So I can't speak about what I didn't see. I do see these pictures, and when I built my house with a crane, if you did that, you got thrown off the property. I don't believe that that's OSHA compliant to have people working and placing a sign, and having a sidewalk that's open is a problem. But this person was there all day and saw it, and I believe even had some video, so I'd like to get something meaningful as opposed to me telling you what's already obvious in the picture. Thankfully, nobody got hurt, but there was a disturbing comment made a couple council sessions ago about slip and falls, about lawsuits. Oh, we got insurance for that. That is not the way to go about risk management. The way to go about risk management is to avoid problems before they happen. Because you won't have insurance for long if you start dropping things on people's heads. This to me looks like a disaster. But
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
That's not a crane, that's a man lifting device, and that's an illegal hitch.
Okay, there you go.
You can't be hoisting material like that on a man lifting device.
You are.
And that's an ANSI violation.
That's an expert. Now there's an expert opinion. So yeah, we got something to talk about, but I'm not prepared. I mean, you want to talk about it tonight? I'd like a report as to why all this stuff was violated. With that being your corner office, Mr. Reeves, right there, right behind that sign, right behind that palm tree. I don't know if you were there. I think Kyle might have been in that weekend. I'm not sure. But somebody should have been supervising this a lot better than it was.
Well, Kyle and I were both out there. We weren't out there all the time.
Okay.
But after I got these pictures, I happened to see a crane right over here across the bridge going up on a 4-story condo, okay? And I stopped and talked to the guy. And what he had was, he had cones around it. It was not blocking the sidewalk. And he said that the crane operator over there was one individual. They were putting an air conditioner or something up on the roof. But in any case, I went back to the sign company and asked them, and they stated that they meet all the This photo is taken, they told me, with 250, worth over 250K and over dozens of homes that can be readily paced and has been in business for 45 years, and they sent me a picture of the truck. We reviewed the video to see, as several people said while I was over here, when this was happening. Well, that is not totally correct. We reviewed the video for the building. Some people that stated they were over here weren't over here on this day. They might have been here the day before or the day after, but they weren't here when this ramp was, or this lift was operating. And, you know, if you want us to put some more regulations on them, you know, one suggestion we got from the Florida League of Cities, and I laid it at your desk, was, you know, make them fill out a contractor declaration and maybe put some more, you know, information in our bids and stuff. But traditionally, the contractors are responsible for their safety requirements. And if they're violating safety requirements, it's, the contractor typically is the person that's responsible for that. And there was no, you know, when we looked at the videos from the cameras that are around the building, there was very little passerbys or, you know, cars coming in and out. It was here till roughly lunchtime. It was not here all day either. So that's just some information that we got from the videos. We went back and reviewed them to see who was out there. And so, I mean, it's up to the council with, you know, if you want us to get more stringent a policy when we give a contract out, then we can do that.
Did you have that contractor fill out an indemnification?
He gave us insurance.
Insurance, we're named insured?
Yes.
Okay. But I'm concerned that arguably Frank is an expert, okay? I could call him as an expert in trial with his experience, okay? And he just told you this is illegal. So why was it on our property to begin with, okay? We need to do a better job, okay? I'm really distressed by that comment that one of our council members made. We have insurance, okay? As I said then, and I'll say it again, I've got insurance too. I don't bring a can of gasoline and start playing with it by the stove. Insurance companies aren't in business to pay out money to you for being reckless, for being negligent, and to me, this is terrible. And I just heard all I need to hear from an expert. This should have never even been on the property.
What's more disturbing is there's the guy standing in front, or on the side of the sign is actually welding. Okay?
No hard hat, nothing.
Well, he's got, I've seen this, so I can,
Okay.
he didn't have a tarp on, and there's people walking by, and I brought this up at the council session. If you ever look at a welder's apartment, it'll burn your retinas out. Okay? It's called welder's eye, and you don't know you get it till about 2 a.m. and it feels like someone just kicked sand in your eye. And who knows how many people went by there, maybe it didn't affect anyone, maybe it affected 2 or 3 people, but 2 o'clock in the morning, you probably thought, what the hell's going on? Didn't even know what happened. So, but as people on council told me, hey, it's here, what do you want to do about it now? So,
It's not, it's about stepping up our game. And if our approach to risk management is we got insurance, it's a bad approach, real bad approach.
Mayor,
Yeah,
Councilmember Gunn.
sure.
You know, listening to these issues and seeing the pictures and stuff like that, I think we can do better on some of this stuff. I do. I have formal safety training from the Naval Postgraduate School in Monterey, as well as the University of Southern California, so I think I can speak responsibly to causation factors and chains of mishaps and that sort of thing. I think we can do better. And what I would like to do is take a crack at building some sort of foundation and policy. I just recently read an article and I forwarded it to the city manager regarding the city of New Orleans. ones after the mishap at the Hard Rock Cafe and how they are developing policies and city ordinances and guidelines revolving around contractor responsibility and building that into the bidding process to ensure responsibility in your contractor. So I'd like to kind of take this on as a pet project and come up with kind of a straw man or foundation that the city might incorporate, and I can report back at a later time before we have to move forward on this thing. That's all I have, thanks.
Thank you, Glenn.
I would be in support of Glenn doing that. I mean, to me, you know, we can't fault the city because I wouldn't expect Lynn to know as much as Frank as what is appropriate crane or man lifter. And it's not Lynn's job to go out there and tell the contractors, people that they need to wear a hard hat. It should be the contractor's responsibility. And I think, you know, they're not out there supervising, and for Lynn to say, hold on, wait a minute, you gotta move your truck while the sign is up in the air, you know, I don't think it's Lynn's responsibility, but I do like the idea of maybe putting in some policy or safety declaration, so we put it on the contractor from the beginning that A, they have to have the proper equipment that's OSHA or whatever approved, and if they're in violation of that and something, God forbid, happens, then maybe we're covered. At that point, we're probably never going to be covered, but maybe a little. So I think that's a good idea. If Glenn wants to spearhead that, I'm all for that.
I also agree, it's a good idea.
Mayor,
Yes,
Councilmember Swope.
sure.
Yes, I just wanted to comment saying I agree 100% with Councilmember Glenn Gunn as well as Councilmember Dr. Aki. I think Glenn should spearhead this thing. He's got a lot of knowledge and experience in it, and I would love to see him take it on and help bring some kind of resolution to it.
Everybody agree with that? I want to go to citizens. Any citizen want to comment? Yes. You can speak right at this mic here like Bill Lusk did.
Jim Vanscoy, 7th Street, Bel Beach. I witnessed it. I drove in with my car. I witnessed this thing being unattended, okay, and the sheriff was sitting in the parking lot the same time I pulled in. So he witnessed me pulling in. So I don't know who he's referring to didn't witness it, but Deborah Mull said it was on her security cameras from her house. I don't think I ever heard her say she was physically over here. Second of all, I know there has to be a perimeter set up, a certain amount of feet where it's a safe distance from any kind of operating equipment. That's just a standard OSHA thing. Third of all, we roped off the sign, the whole 9 yards with that yellow tape. We roped off the tennis courts for safety reasons. I'm just wondering why we did not rope off an area near the sidewalk so no one got near it. These are the things that should be addressed before anybody starts. They should come here and say, okay, I want to see what kind of safety precautions you're going to put in place to safeguard anybody that comes into the area or in close contact of anything. And that's what it should be, not just a policy set down, but they should, if they want to contract with our city, they should come here and show us the safety measures, that they physically know the safety measures that they're going to apply when doing work for our city. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Back to council. I think we're kind of in agreement that would maybe get Glenn to maybe spearhead, do a little bit of work on a policy here. It doesn't have to be 65,000 pages, but let's get something down. I do like, Lynn, what you have given us, something to give to these contractors saying, and you know, it's not like we're putting up a sign every day, but I mean, the next time we do something, say, here's our rules of procedure, if you will, and this is what we expect you to adhere to, and we'll be watching, you know, and if they're not adhering to it, then it's incumbent on you, Lynn, or Kyle, to stop them, you know, I mean, I'm not going to get mad if the sign doesn't get put up because somebody's breaking safety rules. Again, back to our strategic plan, safety. So I'm fine with it. Everybody else want to go forward in that manner? We're all good? Everybody's saying yes. Okay. Glenn?
I got it. There's a lot of human factors in what's been saying, and everybody plays a role. And if anybody happened to be walking by and saw something that didn't look right, then they had a duty and an obligation to say something, to track down the city manager or talk to the job supervisor. I think everybody is kind of reluctant when they see something. There's a bunch of experts operating heavy equipment or doing some highly technical thing, and to stand over the shoulder of an electrician and say, hey, that doesn't look right or something. I mean, everybody is kind of hesitant to do something, or they just don't have the technical background to say something. But everybody plays a role in this thing, and I'll move forward and try to come up with something we can incorporate.
Thank you, Glenn. Thanks for helping out on this. All right, we come to item 9, general business. Do we have any items that were not on the agenda?
Can I add an item for the next work session, maybe,
Sure.
for January? Can we maybe revisit the Zoom virtual call-in? Because I think we have an election coming up, and I think it may set a bad example if we keep having virtual Zoom participants in the meetings. I think that it's going to come to a point where it's going to get abused.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know you were going to bring this up, but we have certain people that are coming in sporadically. Fred, I remember asking this question back when this all started, and we said we'll address it if it becomes a problem. I don't think it's become a problem yet, but it's becoming an issue, okay? I think we need to address it at this point. And what does it mean to attend a council session? We know what the Attorney General says, that it's 4. When we started tonight, we had 4 people here. We almost didn't have a quorum. Robin was a whole minute late, which was no big deal, right? We came in, but we would have waited a few minutes anyway, but we need people here, and so I think it is something we can put on the next council session. That's not a problem. Not council, the next work session, that's January, okay? Patty?
Yes.
Yes.
Do we have a list going forward, like 12 months of when work sessions will be, so you know what I'm saying? So we can
Traditionally, I thought when I started, I remember I showed up for a non-existent work session and Patty got me the thing. Was like, what are you doing here? I'm like, oh, there's a work session. She's like, no, there is not. I thought it was the second Monday.
Usually.
Third, sorry.
Third, yeah.
Like every 2 weeks, so the first Monday and then the third
Is
Monday.
that because since I've been on council and before that, they always say, are you available? And if not everyone's available, then they change it.
Right.
But it is always going to be the third.
Here's what I would suggest. For us, we got 4 more months left of this council. When the new council comes in, okay, have them make up their schedule. I just don't think we should give them their schedule or, because there's going to be new people. There's definitely going to be new people on council, so at least some new people. So definitely have them decide. That's my point. I mean, you can make it right now for them and you can saddle them with it. They can always change it, so.
Well, until March, can we at least make it the third?
Yeah, January would be like
Ideally.
Well, actually, January, the third Monday is a holiday.
Never mind.
Martin Luther King's birthday, right?
And
It's not going to be a Monday.
I think the third Monday in February is a holiday also. I
That's an
think.
instead.
It's a president's day.
So when those have come up, we've done them, either a day later or done them on Monday. So
When you say a day later, that means Tuesday.
maybe Tuesday or we've
Wednesday,
done them, a week later on a Monday, but that's really up to the council, what they want to do. So since you're talking about it, maybe we should talk about January.
Yeah, because I'm with Frank, it's a lot easier to get things planned way
You know,
ahead.
I have like personal business sometimes, and I don't want to miss one, but I can always.
You only can miss a certain amount too, that's the.
I understand, but what I'm saying is I can make my schedule flexible, so.
January 3rd is our meeting, our council meeting, right? Okay, right after the new year. And then the 17th, I believe, would be Martin Luther King's birthday, right?
Maybe the 18th, the Tuesday?
18th or 19th, yeah, if you want to. I mean, sometimes people like to string an extra day. It doesn't matter to me, I'm going to be here, so I'm very flexible.
Mayor, Councilmember Swope.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a quick comment. Sometimes if you a council member doesn't show up for something, they're protected by HIPAA, and I don't need to disclose any other thing about that. So obviously, I care enough about the city to at least call in during my situation. So I didn't really kind of appreciate, because I think you're aiming that towards me, and I just wanted to make my comment.
No, I'm sorry, Rita, if you thought that, but I wasn't aiming it towards anybody. And, I mean, you don't have to give any excuses why you're on the phone, or HIPAA or not, I was just saying it in general.
Yeah, we're just trying to schedule a date here. So the choice, I guess, folks, 17th's a holiday. I don't care whether it's the 18th, 19th, 20th, whenever, pick a day, whatever works for the majority will be the day.
How about the following day? How about just
The
Tuesday?
18th, Tuesday, January 18th. You all good?
Then we'll put that on the.
Okay, so that will do Jan, and then figure February and February. I mean, we may not even have enough for a work session, we'll see.
Okay.
And if it's a short work session, I think we only did this once, but if there's only a couple of items, which there never is anymore, but if there's a couple of items, you could always call a work session after a council session. If it's a normal council session, if it's one of Lynn's famous 1 o'clockers, then forget it, you know. So that we can't do.
I'll try to help you out.
Although it's technically the next day. So. Anybody else? Leslie, I promised you 10, I'm giving you 9. So don't say I never
Mayor,
Oh, now Lynn's gonna go mess it up. Go ahead.
Okay, this won't take long. You had asked about speed control on the bridge.
Yes.
And I got them to put a box up there.
Okay.
They did it for a week. The 85th percentile was 36.6 miles per hour. The speed limit's 35. So they also had 37,604 vehicles during that time. And the sheriff categorized it as low. They
What
put
was
out
low, the speed thing, or, because here's my concern with
low
that.
problem.
Okay, because 85% of the, in fact, more than 85% of the population always follows the rules. They follow the speeding rules, they don't rob, they don't steal, they don't cheat. It's that like 5%. So what did you find on the outliers? Because I think that's what our citizen was
Okay.
talking about.
They had 10 patrols for speeding. And out of that 10 patrols, we got 8 tickets. And we're going to continue this into December, so I just wanted to give you that information as an update. And
Did you do a special patrol yet, or? Don't answer if you don't want to, but.
I asked them, and they sent the, what do you call it? I call it the rat patrol out, but they sent some guys out for me. So, hey, if it doesn't cost us money, we'll take it. So, I think that's everything I have. I just want to give you that update. And the sign's lit.
Signs lit, I saw it tonight, yeah. Didn't look too bad, but we'll see what it looks like fully dark today.
Yeah, I gave you a picture of it this morning at 6 o'clock without the digital.
Take your word for it.
So, you kind of had an idea of, both things with the digital. It's set up to go off at 10 o'clock right now, the digital portion.
10 to 10 p.m.
And the sign will stay lit all night, but not the digital portion.
Right. I think that was the concern.
I think that's that's fair.
Let's see what happens, yeah, I mean,
There's no real light splash from,
let's see what it looks like tonight.
with the digital off, the light splash is so minimal it doesn't even reach the sidewalk.
Okay.
So,
And that's what you had said initially. All right. Anyone else? Anyone on the phone?
No.
911, thanks to Lynn Reeves. Sorry, I almost gave you 9 o'clock there, Leslie. Everyone okay with adjournment? We are adjourned, thank you.